Let's get started.
Mr. Trump, as you may have heard, the 2012 Republican nominee for President Mitt Romney had some things to say about you today. He said your domestic policy will lead to recession. He said your foreign policy will make us less safe. And then he listed what he said are your personal qualities, quoting now Romney on Trump, quote, the bullying, the greed, the showing off, the misogyny, the absurd third-grade theatrics. He challenged you to answer with substance, not insults. How do you answer Mitt Romney, sir?
Well, look, he was a failed candidate. He should have beaten President Obama very easy. He failed miserably, and it was an embarrassment to everybody, including the Republican Party. He went away. It looked like he went away on a vacation the last month. So I don't take that, and I guess obviously he wants to be relevant. He wants to be back in the game. As far as domestic policy and trade, which is killing our country, he said free trade, and I believe in free trade also. But if you look at China, and if you look at Japan, and if you look at Mexico, both at the border, by the way, where they're killing us, both at the border and with trade, and every other country we do business with, we are getting absolutely crushed on trade. And he said free trade, I say free trade, great, but not when they're beating us so badly. With China, we're going to lose $505 billion in terms of trades. You just can't do it. Mexico, $58 billion. Japan, probably about, they don't know it yet, but about $109 billion. Every country we lose money with. As far as I'm concerned, we've got to reduce, we have to redo our trade deals 100%. I have the greatest business people in the world lined up to do it. We will make great trade deals.
Mr. Trump, Romney also talked about your position on race and the controversy over your failure to denounce David Duke on Sunday. You have repeatedly disavowed him since then, but I'd like to go deeper than that. What are your views on the Ku Klux Klan and white supremacists?
I totally disavow the Ku Klux Klan. I totally disavow David Duke. I've been doing it now for 2 weeks. You're probably about the 18th person that's asked me the question. It was very clear. That question was also talked about in the form of groups. I want to know, which groups are you talking about? You have to tell me which groups. Ultimately, he got to the Ku Klux Klan, which obviously I'm going to disavow. And by the way, if you look on my Twitter account, almost immediately after the program, they were disavowed again. You know, it's amazing. When I do something on Twitter, everybody picks it up, goes all over the place. But when I did this one, nobody ever picks it up. Take a look at my Twitter account.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Senator Rubio. Senator Rubio, 3 weeks ago, you said, quote, I don't do the personal attacks, primarily because it's not who I am, because I think it's beneath the office that I'm seeking, but also because I don't want to embarrass my kids. But in the past week, you've mocked Mr. Trump's tan. You've made fun of his spelling. You called him a con artist. You suggested he wet himself backstage at the last debate, along with other vulgar jokes and jabs. So what happened?
Yeah, you know, Brett, let me say something. This campaign for the last year, Donald Trump has basically mocked everybody with personal attacks. He's done so to people that are sitting on the stage today. He's done so about people that are disabled. He's done it about every other candidate in this race. So if there's anyone who's ever deserved to be attacked that way, it's been Donald Trump for the way he's treated people for the last campaign. Now, that said, I would much prefer to have a policy debate. I hope that's what we'll have here tonight. Let's have a policy debate. Let's talk about Donald Trump's strategy and my strategy and Ted's strategy and John Kasich's strategy when it comes to ISIS and on health care and on the important issues facing this country. But let's be honest, too, about all this. The media has given these personal attacks that Donald Trump has made an incredible amount of coverage. Let's start talking again about the issues that matter to this country. I'm ready to do that starting right here, right now, tonight.
Mr. Trump, your response?
Well, I also happen to call him a lightweight, okay, and I have said that, so I would like to take that back. He's really not that much of a lightweight. And as far as, and I have to say this, he hit my hands. Nobody has ever hit my hands. I've never heard of this one. Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee you.
All right. Okay. Moving on.
Okay, Senator Cruz. You say that you are the true conservative in this race. But 15 states have voted now, and you have won only 4 of them. You've lost repeatedly with what is supposed to be your core voter groups, including evangelicals and conservatives. So hasn't your brand of conservatism been rejected by an electorate that appears to be more taken with Mr. Trump's populist message?
Well, Megyn, you know, at the end of the day, for the folks at home, this is not about the insults back and forth between the candidates. This is not about what attacks we can throw at each other. This is the people at home who are struggling. Through 7 years of Barack Obama, this is the single moms who are working 2 and 3 jobs, 28, 29 hours a week, because their hours have been forcibly reduced because of Obamacare. This is the truck drivers and the steel workers and the mechanics with calluses on their hands who've seen their wages not grow year after year after year while the cost of living goes up. This is all the young people coming out of school with student loans up to their eyeballs that aren't able to find a job. And I don't think the people of America are interested in a bunch of bickering school children. They're interested in solutions, not slogans. It's easy to say, make things better, make things great. You can even print it and put it on a baseball cap. But the question is, do you understand the principles that made America great in the first place? As president, I will repeal every word of Obamacare. I'll pull back the regulators that are killing small businesses. And we will pass a simple flat tax and abolish the IRS. And what that's going to do, Megyn, is small businesses are going to explode. We're going to see millions of high-paying jobs. We're going to see wages going up. We're going to see opportunity. That's where our focus needs to be. That's where my focus is. And that is why our campaign is the only campaign that over and over again has beaten Donald Trump to date. And it's why we're the one campaign that going forward can and will beat Donald Trump in this election.
Go ahead, Mr. Trump.
I've heard Ted say that over and over again on television, that he's the only one that can beat me. Just for the record, I've won 10. He's won 3 or 4. Last week, in fact, on Tuesday, I was 500,000 votes higher than him. I was 1 million votes higher than Marco. 1 million votes. That's a lot of votes. And was by far in first place. So I keep hearing that he's the only one that can beat me, but he's getting beaten very, very badly. So where does this come from? Where does it come from?
Go ahead, Senator Rubio.
Yeah, I would just say a couple things. There is no doubt that Donald has done well in these elections. There's no doubt about that. The numbers are there. Here's what the numbers also say. 2/3 of the people who have cast a vote in a Republican primary or caucus have voted against you. They do not want you to be our nominee. And the reason why is because we are not going to turn over the conservative movement or the party of Lincoln or Reagan, for example, to someone whose positions are not conservative, to someone who last week defended Planned Parenthood for 30 seconds on a debate stage, to someone, for example, that has no ideas on foreign, someone who thinks the nuclear triad is a rock band from the 1980s, to someone who time and again on issue after issue has not proven that he has the principles that outline what the conservative movement has been about, and as Ted said, the things that made America great. America is great because of the conservative principles of limited government and free enterprise and our strong national defense, and our nominee needs to be someone that stands by those things.
All right.
Donald has not demonstrated that.
Go ahead, Mr. Trump, and then we're going to have to go to Governor Kasich.
Very nice words, but happens to be wrong. CNN just came out with a poll 2 days ago. A national poll, excuse me, a national poll where he's at 15, he's at 14, and I'm at 49. So when he says 75%, that would mean that 80% of the people don't dig you, and I'm back down to 50.
Of all the people on the stage, he performs the worst against Hillary Clinton.
Wrong. I beat Hillary Clinton. I beat Hillary Clinton in many polls. I beat Hillary Clinton in many polls.
If you're our nominee,
excuse me, I think I'm talking.
Hold on,
excuse me.
I beat Hillary Clinton in many polls.
Hold on.
I hope you can
The audience cannot understand when you're talking over each other. Finish your point, Mr. Trump.
I beat Hillary Clinton in many polls. The Q poll just came out. I beat Hillary Clinton in a recent Fox poll. I beat Hillary Clinton in USA Today. I beat her today in a poll in Ohio. I'm the only one that beats Hillary Clinton. I beat her, and I have not started on Hillary yet. Believe me, I will start soon. I haven't even started.
Okay. Governor Kasich. Governor Kasich, today you admitted that you have a narrow path to the nomination through a contested convention. Today also, Mitt Romney proposed that Republicans should vote for Senator Rubio in Florida. They should vote for you in Ohio. They should vote for Senator Cruz in states that he can beat Mr. Trump to prevent Mr. Trump from getting the nomination. So do you buy Romney's blueprint? And can you say tonight to your Florida supporters that they should vote for Senator Rubio to get a contested convention?
You know, this is so much about process. It frankly is boring to me. I would like it clear, though, since we're talking about polls, I beat Hillary Clinton by more than anybody, by 11 points. And the reason it happens
In one poll.
in one poll. You know, the reason is because, as the Democrats tell me all the time, I can get the crossover votes. You see, because throughout this campaign, I've talked about issues. I have never tried to go and get into these kind of scrums that we're seeing here on the stage, and people say everywhere I go, you seem to be the adult on the stage. In terms of, you know, Mitt Romney's, he's a great guy, but he doesn't determine my strategy. The fact of the matter is I'm running for president because I worked hard to fix this country when I was in Washington as the chairman of the Budget Committee, where we had some of the most significant job growth after we balanced the budget. We had wages going up. It was very successful in Ohio. Our wages grow faster than the national average. We're up over 400,000 jobs. We paid down, back in the old days, they paid down $500 billion of the national debt. It's a formula that works. And I believe that formula will work when I return to Washington as the president. And by the way, I won't need on-the-job training because I know how to do all of this. And within the first 100 days, I will have a plan that will pass the Congress because it is reasonable and I can bring both sides together.
But, Governor, you say this is all about process. But for voters, they need to see a path to get to the nomination if they're going to support you. On Super Tuesday, you finished in single digits in 9 out of 11 states. So you can see that your path is through a contested convention. How do you get
Well, Brett,
there?
I think we're all really there. I mean, the simple fact is that, you all wrote me off. You wrote me off before I even got to New Hampshire. Then when I finished second in New Hampshire, you wrote me off in the South. Then you wrote me off in Super Tuesday. I split delegates in Vermont with Donald Trump. I finished second in Massachusetts, and we won delegates in Virginia. But guess what? It's now March Madness, and we're heading up north to my turf, okay? And let me just tell you this. I will win Ohio. And I am going to move all across this country. And over time, as people begin to finally hear my message, you know what people say, Brett, to me all the time? Why don't they give you any time on the debate stage? Why is that? So now all of a sudden I'm starting to get it. And what I want the people to know is I know how to bring people together, Republicans and Democrats. I have successfully, both at the federal level and the state level, brought economic growth, wage growth, and economic security to this country, and I want to go back and do it again, and I'm going to keep talking about my message of bringing people together and motivating people in the neighborhoods to realize they don't need somebody from Washington galloping in. There are many things they can do where they live because the strength of our country is in our neighborhoods and our families, and I'm going to keep doing this.
Gentlemen, we want to focus now on the economy, which is one of the top issues on Facebook, with 6.6 million people discussing it online. A lot of that conversation is happening here in Detroit, where the unemployment rate is 10.9%. That's more than double the national average. Senator Rubio, you have taken to calling Mr. Trump a con artist who portrays himself as a hero to working people while he's really been, in your words, sticking it to the American workers for 40 years. But he has built a big company that employs thousands of people. Question. How many jobs have you created?
Well, first of all, government doesn't. First of all, Chris, my point is exactly right. He has spent a career convincing Americans that he's something that he's not in exchange for their money. Now he's trying to do the same in exchange for their country. This is a fact. He talks about these great businesses that he's built. He inherited over $100 million.
Wrong.
And with that money, he lost more money than he's
wrong.
Mr. Trump,
He talks about how he wants to create jobs in America. He can start tonight by announcing that all the Donald J. Trump clothing will no longer be made in China and in Mexico, but will be made here in the United States. And on the issue of job creation, I find this interesting. The private sector creates jobs. The jobs of those of us in public service are to put in place policies that allow the economy to grow. That's the problem with the Democratic Party. They think government is what creates jobs. Government does not create jobs. Now, the way you create jobs is you make America the easiest and the best place in the world to start a business or to expand an existing business. If you go on my website, marcorubio.com, you will see a real plan to fix our taxes, to roll back regulations, to repeal and replace Obamacare, not just lines around the states. Serious policies and proposals.
Sir, Mr. Trump, I'd like you to respond. You have 30 seconds to respond. But as part of that, could you respond to his specific assertion about Trump collection clothes, which you say some of it is made in Mexico?
This little guy has lied so much about my record.
There we go. The person
He has lied so much about my record.
Mr. Rubio, Senator Rubio, why don't you let him
And
finish?
I will tell you this. First of all, I got a call from my sister and brother tonight, and they said, we had no idea Dad gave you $200 million. Believe me, I started off with $1 million. I built a company that's worth more than $10 billion. And I say it not in a bragging way, but that's the kind of thinking we need. Very low debt, tremendous cash flow. My financials are they're all in there with the federal elections. You've seen them. Everybody's seen them. I say it only because that's the kind of thinking this country needs with $19 trillion in debt. Believe me.
Wait 1 second. Specifically and quickly on the question, will you promise that you will, and how soon will you move your clothing collection to clothes that are made in China and Mexico?
They devalue their currencies. I will do that. And by the way, I have been doing it more and more. But they devalue their currencies, in particular China. Mexico is doing a big number now also. Japan is unbelievable what they're doing. They devalue their currencies, and they make it impossible for clothing makers in this country to do clothing in this country. And if you look at what's happened on 7th Avenue, and you look at what's happened in New York with the garment industry, so much of the clothing now comes out from Vietnam, China, and other places. And it's all because of devaluation. By the way, the Trans-Pacific, if you look at the TPP, a total disaster, which, by the way, Marco is in favor of. It is a disaster for our country. It's trying to be approved by various people, including President Obama. And I'll tell you something, the biggest problem with that is they don't take into concurrence the devaluation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trump. Senator Rubio.
And they're killing.
Wait. Senator Rubio.
The answer is he's not going to do it. And you know why? Because there are plenty of clothing makers in America. If you go on my website, marcorubio.com, everything we have on there is made in America. The reason why he makes it in China or in Mexico is because he can make more money on it. That's why he's doing it. And the second point, you see what happens again when you challenge him on a policy issue? You ask him about the economy, and the first thing he does is launch an attack about some little guy thing. Because he doesn't have answers. And he's asking us to make him the president of the United States of America.
I know
This is not a game.
I know what's happening in the economy. You don't know it.
Well, then answer the economy
You haven't
question.
employed in your life one
But he
person.
doesn't answer
I've
the
employed
economy
tens of
question.
thousands of people.
You've bankrupted four companies.
You haven't employed one person.
You ever heard of Trump Steaks? You ever heard of Trump
You know what?
vodka?
You know what?
All
Take
of
a look
these
at Trump
companies that
Steaks.
He's ruined.
By the way, that's
Trump
the other
Steaks
thing.
is gone. You've ruined these
Mitt
companies.
Romney
He's not
came
gonna
up
make
with
America
things that were
great.
false. Totally false. And now, the funny thing is, he didn't talk
here
about
you
the
go.
hundreds of really successful jobs, the buildings all over the world that are made of fortune.
doesn't even
and a lot of
own one
people-
of those buildings.
He doesn't
He
talk
doesn't
about
Trump,
that.
I have a policy question for you, sir.
Let's see if he answers it.
I will. Don't worry about it, Marco. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, little Marco. I will.
All right, well, let's hear Big Donald.
Don't worry about it,
All right,
little.
wait.
Don't worry about it, little Marco.
Gentlemen, gentlemen,
You ought to show up.
gentlemen, you got to do better than this.
This guy has the number one.
Mr. Trump, may I ask you,
absentee
Mr. Trump,
record in the
I'd like to ask you a
United
policy question.
Doesn't show
Your
up to
proposed
vote.
tax cut.
That's why the
Your
people in
proposed-
Florida do not like him.
Mr. Trump, your proposed tax cut would add $10 trillion to the nation's debt over 10 years, even if the economy grows the way that you say it will. You insist that you could make up for a good deal of that, you say, by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse.
Correct.
Like what? And please be specific.
Department of Education, we're cutting Common Core, we're getting rid of Common Core, we're bringing education locally. Department of Environmental Protection, We are going to get rid of it in almost every form. We're going to have little tidbits left, but we're going to take a tremendous amount out. We have various other things. If you look at the IRS, if you look at every single agency, we can cut it down, and I mean really cut it down and save. The waste, fraud, and abuse is massive. Larry Kudlow, great guy, everybody respects him, said my plan for taxes and tax cutting is the best by far of everybody.
But Mr. Trump, your numbers don't add up. Please put up full screen number 4. The Education Department, you talk about cutting. The total budget for the Education Department is $78 billion, and that includes Pell Grants for low-income students and aid to states for special education. I assume you wouldn't cut those things. The entire budget for the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, $8 billion. Okay. The deficit this year is $544 billion. That's more than $500 billion. Your numbers don't add up, sir.
Let me explain something. Because of the fact that the pharmaceutical companies are not mandated to bid properly, they have hundreds of billions of dollars in waste. We don't bid properly. We don't have proper bidding procedures. The reason we don't is because they take care of all of the senators, all of the congressmen, and they don't bid. They don't go out to bid.
Trump?
Take a look. Excuse me. You're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars.
No, you're not.
If we went out to the proper bid. Of course you are.
No, you're not, sir. Let's put up full screen number 2. You say that Medicare could save $300 billion a year negotiating lower drug prices, but Medicare total only spends $78 billion a year on drugs. Sir, that's the facts. You're talking about saving more money on Medicare.
I'm saying saving through negotiation throughout the economy, you'll save $300 billion a year.
Deficit.
And that's a huge, of course it is. We're going to buy things for less money. Of course it is. That works out.
The only money that we buy, the only drugs that we pay for is through Medicare.
I'm not only talking about drugs, I'm talking about other things. We'll save more than $300 billion a year if we properly negotiate. We don't do that. We don't negotiate. We don't negotiate anything.
Can I?
No, I promise I'll get to you in a moment, sir. Senator Cruz, one of the centerpieces of your campaign, in fact, you mentioned it again tonight, is that you will abolish the IRS. Question, though, who will collect the taxes that you're still calling for? Who will oversee to make sure that people pay the taxes that they rightfully owe? And who will check on the various tax deductions and tax credits that you still want?
So my simple flat tax, I've rolled out in precise detail how it will operate, where every American can fill out our taxes on a postcard. And if you want to actually see the postcard, see all the details, you can find them on our website. It's tedcruz.org. When we get rid of all the corporate welfare, all the subsidies, all the carve-outs in the IRS code, it dramatically simplifies it. And under Obama, the IRS has become so corrupt and so politicized, we need to abolish it altogether. Now, at the end of that, there will still be an office in the Treasury Department to receive the postcards, but it will be dramatically simpler. And let me take a moment, Chris, to go back to this exchange that was going on in between all of the insults. Let me point out the specificity that was lacking. It's very easy to say, let's cut waste, fraud, and abuse. I've rolled out a detailed plan to cut $500 billion in federal spending, specifying exactly what I would cut. It's easy to say it, but one of the great disconnects to all the people, all of the voters, I understand the folks who are supporting Donald right now. You're angry at Washington, and he uses angry rhetoric. But for 40 years, Donald has been part of the corruption in Washington that you're angry about. And you're not going to stop the corruption in Washington by supporting someone who has supported liberal Democrats for 4 decades, from Jimmy Carter to John Kerry to Hillary Clinton. You're not going to stop the corruption and the cronyism by supporting someone who has used government power for private gain. Instead, we need a president who stands with the American people.
Governor Kasich, I promise I will get to you, but you do get 30 seconds to respond, Mr. Trump.
Well, all of a sudden, I hear for 40 years I've been involved in Washington. I have been supporting people for many years. And these people have been politicians, and they've been on both sides, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. I've supported everybody. Because until recently, I wasn't a politician, and I hope maybe you don't all consider me a politician right now. I hate the term politician, but I've been supporting politicians. A recent article somewhere said Donald Trump is a world-class businessman who goes out and he does get along with everybody. I've supported Democrats and I've supported Republicans, and as a businessman, I owed that to my company, to my family, to my workers, to everybody to get along. Part of the problem we have in Washington, Chris, is it's total gridlock. Nobody gets along. We need people to get along. We need to be able to get things done.
Governor Kasich, Democrats, as you know, will make income inequality a big issue in the general election. You support raising the minimum wage, although you say not to the $15 an hour that Democrats are talking about. Mr. Trump opposes any increase because he says it will price American workers out of the world market. Is he wrong about that? No increase in the minimum wage?
Wait a minute. First of all, I didn't say I was for increasing the federal minimum wage. I said in Ohio we increase it modestly every single year. So I'm not for a federal minimum wage increase.
But you did talk about states doing it.
Well, if states want to do it, they ought to sit down with business people and the lawmakers and figure out what will work. But hold on a second here with everything else. I'm the only person on this stage who actually was the chief architect of balancing the federal budget. It's not a theory for me. It's not some, you have to know how to put everything together. And, you know, I spent 10 years of my life to get there, and I did not do that because I'm worshiping at some balanced budget shrine. The reason I did it is when you have common sense regulations, lower taxes on individuals and businesses, and you have a fiscal plan that makes sense, the job creators will expand employment. And what happened? When I was there, the jobs were exploding. Bill Clinton's tried to take credit for it. When I went to Ohio, we're up 400,000 jobs. It's the same formula, but it isn't easy. I fought the entire Washington establishment and won, because when you balance a budget, you must affect every single thing. Everything in the federal government specifically. You cannot get there with theories or broad statements, and you have to be willing to take the heat. In fact, I fought a Republican president who I thought was not offering constructive proposals to fix this economy. So when we talk about all this, there's one person on this stage and one person who's been a candidate for president in either party that restored economic strength, growth, a balanced budget, paid down debt, cut taxes, the things that people in this country want. No theories, reality.
Thank you, Governor.
All right, let's talk immigration for a little bit. Senator Cruz, we'll start with you. You have repeatedly touted how you have stood shoulder to shoulder with Senator Jeff Sessions to fight illegal immigration and amnesty. But Senator Sessions just endorsed Donald Trump. If voters want Jeff Sessions-style immigration policies, isn't their choice rather clear?
Yes, their choice is very clear. If you look to the actual record, you know, Donald mentioned a moment ago that he was just doing business when he was writing checks to liberal Democrats. But that's not, in fact, the checks he was writing. Listen, we could all understand if you write a check to a city commission because you're looking for a zoning waiver on building a building. That may be corrupt, but you could understand real estate developers doing that. That's not what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump supported Jimmy Carter over Ronald Reagan. Donald Trump supported John Kerry over George W. Bush. If you don't like Obamacare, Donald Trump funded Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi taking over Congress to pass Obamacare. On immigration, if you don't like amnesty, if you don't like the Gang of Eight, Donald Trump funded 5 of the 8 members of the Gang of Eight, $50,000. And let's talk about this election. The choice Republican primary voters are making is who is best prepared to stand up to Hillary Clinton and beat Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump has written checks to Hillary Clinton not once, not twice, not 3 times, 10 times. And 4 of those checks were not to her Senate campaign. It wasn't that she was the New York senator and it was a cost of doing business. It was to her presidential campaign. Donald Trump in 2008 wrote 4 checks to elect Hillary Clinton as president. Okay. So I'd like to ask Donald, why did you write checks to Hillary Clinton to be president in 2008? It wasn't for business. And how can you stand on a debate stage now with her and say you don't think she should be president?
Actually, it was for business. It was for business. I pride myself, including outside of the United States. I'm doing almost 120 deals outside of which I hope to be able to stop very soon and let my children handle it. But we're doing many, many deals outside of the United States. I support politicians. 2008, I supported Hillary Clinton. I supported many other people, by the way, and that was because of the fact that I'm in business. I did support very heavily Ronald Reagan. I also supported George Bush, by the way.
All right, Mr. Trump.
But what would you say
stand by,
to Hillary Clinton on the
stand by,
debate
Senator
stage
Cruz.
when you wrote her a check in 2008, wrote her 4 checks?
Let me tell you something, Ted. The last person that Hillary Clinton wants to face is Donald Trump. That I can tell you.
All right. Let's move on. And with all due respect, we have questions. We have questions.
That I can tell you.
No. Hold on. We can do more of this later. So, Mr. Trump, hi.
Hello.
How you doing?
Nice to be with you, Megan.
Great to have you here.
You're looking well. You're looking
As
well.
are you. Back in January, you gave an off-the-record interview to the New York Times. It was apparently audio taped. Now, a recent report in BuzzFeed, citing sources at the Times, reports that in that interview you expressed flexibility when it comes to your immigration policy, specifically with respect to your promise to deport the 11 million people who are now living here illegally. You have suggested that you may have expressed some flexibility when it comes to the size of the wall that you want to build. But did you tell them specifically that you are flexible when it comes to your deportation plans?
I don't know exactly when you talk about off the record. First of all, BuzzFeed, they were the ones that said under no circumstances will I run for president. And were they wrong? But a lot of people said that. Then I did have a meeting with the editorial board of the New York Times, a very nice meeting. Many of those things were off the record, I think at their suggestion and my suggestion. And I think being off the record is a very important thing. I think it's a very, very powerful thing. And I will say this, these 3 gentlemen have gone off the record many times with reporters, and I think they want to honor it. And I would always honor that. I will say, though, in terms of immigration and almost anything else, there always has to be some, tug and pull and deal. And, when I watched Ted stand on the Senate floor, I had great respect for what he did. He stood there for a day and a half or something. In the meantime, what came of it? Nothing. You have to be able to have some flexibility, some negotiation. Now, sometimes you ask for more than you want and you negotiate down to the point. I may have discussed something like that with the New York Times, but I would never release off-the-record conversations. I don't think it's fair, frankly, to do that to anybody.
How flexible are you on this issue?
Not very flexible. No, not very flexible. I give the example. I'm going to build a wall. I'm the one that wants the wall. I'm the one that can build the wall. It's going to get built. And by the way, Mexico is going to pay for the wall. I can tell you that. Mexico is going to pay for the wall. But, and I used an example, and this isn't necessarily what was said, but whatever was said, the wall's 50 feet high. Is it going to be 45 feet or 40 feet? That could very well be. That could very well, he wants it to be higher. That could very well be. But there's always give and take. There's always negotiation. And the best negotiator that knows what he's doing will make a great deal. But we need give and take in government. If you don't have give and take, you're never going to agree on anything.
Senator Rubio, you not only supported the failed immigration reform effort through the Gang of Eight, but you're still on record as favoring an eventual path to citizenship for those who are here illegally. And in addition, you favored in-state tuition for Florida illegal immigrants. You've been hitting Mr. Trump hard on this flexibility discussion with the New York Times, but his supporters might say at least his opening stance was tough.
Well, first of all, let me say that on the issue of the off the record, that's not up to the New York Times. That's up to you, Donald. If tonight you tell the New York Times to release the audio, they will do it, and we can exactly see what your true views are on immigration.
Fine.
Because it is a major issue in your campaign that you've made a center issue. Now, as far as my record on it is concerned, I absolutely want to solve this issue. And I did the best we could in a Senate that was controlled by liberal Democrats and Harry Reid in the hopes that the House, made up of conservatives, would take it up and make it even stronger. And I said that repeatedly at the time. I'm not just saying that now. I said it throughout that process. We do need to deal with this issue. When I'm president, it will not be dealt with the way it was done in the Senate. It'll be done first and foremost by bringing illegal immigration under control and proving it to the American people. And only after that is done can anything else happen. And it will be something the American people support. We'll see what they're willing to support. It's not going to be an executive order, and we're not going to ram it down their throats.
Mr. Trump, I'll let you respond, but do you want to, will you release the tapes? Will you authorize the Times to release the tapes?
I will say one thing. What Marco said is, I understand it. He's talking about a little give and take and a little negotiation. And you know what? That's okay. That's not the worst thing in the world. There's nothing wrong with that. I happen to be much stronger on illegal immigration. Sheriff Joe Arpaio endorsed me, and if he endorses you, believe me, you are the strongest from Arizona. But give and take is okay, and I thought what he said is okay. We may differ on the degree, but what he said to me is okay.
Will you release the tapes?
No,
authorize
I
the
never do that. I would not do that. I don't think I have too much respect. If I deal with you off the record, if I deal with Brett or Chris off the record, I have too much respect for that process to say, just release everything. I would not do that.
Okay, stand by. We're going to continue this right after the break. We have more.
Coming up, more with Megyn, immigration, plus questions on other top issues, including the war on terror. The Fox News Republican presidential debate live from Detroit continues after a quick break.
Republican presidential debate live from the Fox Theater here in Detroit. Let's get back now to the questions. Mr. Trump, your campaign website to this day argues that more visas for highly skilled workers would, quote, decimate American workers. However, at the CNBC debate, you spoke enthusiastically in favor of these visas. So which is it?
I'm changing. We need highly skilled people in this country, and if we can't do it, we'll get them in. And we do need, in Silicon Valley, we absolutely have to have. So we do need highly skilled. And one of the biggest problems we have is people go to the best colleges. They'll go to Harvard, they'll go to Stanford, they'll go to Wharton. As soon as they're finished, they get shoved out. They want to stay in this country. They want to stay here desperately. They're not able to stay here. For that purpose, we absolutely have to be able to keep the brain power in this country.
So you are abandoning the position on your website.
I'm changing it, and I'm softening the position because we have to have talented people in this country.
And you're not releasing the discussion with the New York Times behind closed doors.
That is correct.
Which will have some asking whether, on your immigration policies, you are really just playing to people's fantasies, which is a tactic you praised in your book, The Art of the Deal.
I'm not playing to anybody's fantasies. I'm playing to the fact that our country is in trouble, that we have a tremendous problem with crime. The border is a disaster. It's like a piece of Swiss cheese, and we're going to stop it. We're going to stop people from coming into our country illegally. We're going to stop it.
Senator Cruz, not long ago, you proposed quintupling the number of these foreign worker visas. After you announced for president, you reversed yourself, citing reports that the program was being abused. But that abuse had been around long before your 180. In fact, it was so bad just a few months earlier that a bipartisan group of senators called for an investigation, and you declined to join them. Isn't it a good thing that the American public didn't trust Ted on that one?
Well, the abuse of the H-1B program has been rampant, and in the face of that H-1B abuse, I have proposed and promised as president that I will impose a 180-day moratorium on the H-1B program to implement a comprehensive investigation and audit, because you've got U.S. companies that are firing American workers, bringing in foreign workers, and forcing them to train their replacements. And I would note that is not dissimilar to what we discovered at the last debate concerning the hotel that Donald owns down in Florida. Down in Florida, that hotel has brought in hundreds of foreign workers. And afterwards, it was really striking. I watched a CNN interview Donald did where he explained, he said, well, the problem is you can't find Americans who are qualified or who want to work as waiters and waitresses. Now, let me ask the people here, how many people here have worked as a waiter or waitress? Millions across this country. That is an astonishing statement. You know, Marco's dad started as a bartender. My dad started washing dishes. And yet, you know how many Americans wanted those jobs? Roughly 300 applied. Donald hired 17. And that's why this New York Times tape is so troubling. Because what's been reported is that Donald told the editorial board of the New York Times, what I'm saying on immigration, I don't believe. I'm not going to build a wall. I'm not going to deport people. This is all just rhetoric for the voters. Now, if he didn't say that, he has an easy solution. Simply release the tape. But for everyone at home who's mad at politicians who lied to us, Donald's record right now, as he's standing here, his record right now is one of repeatedly hiring illegal aliens and using American workers.
Go ahead, Mr. Trump.
First of all, I've had tens of thousands of people working for me, most of which, almost 98, 97, 98% of the people in this country, from this country. I'm very proud of it. You have a club in Palm Beach, Florida called the Mar-a-Lago Club. It's a very, very successful club. It has a very short season. It's called The Season, and it goes from November till March. It's a few months, 5 months at the most. People don't want a short-term job. They don't want. So we will bring people in, and we will send the people out. All done legally, all done with a process that's approved by government, 100% approved. We bring people in, we bring them out. When we can, we hire people from Palm Beach or West Palm Beach. But we bring people in, we bring them out. We want to hire as many Americans as we can. But they don't want part-time, very short part-time jobs.
Understood. Thank you.
That's not accurate. I'm sorry, Megan. That's not accurate. There were at least 300 Americans that applied last year. None of them were hired. Some of them have been interviewed.
It's wrong.
They were not hired. And here's why he does it this way. Let me explain why he hires them H-2B. Because when you bring them in this way, when you bring someone in from abroad on one of these visas, they can't go work for anybody else. They either work for you or they have to go back home. You basically have them captive. So you don't have to worry about competing for higher wages with another hotel down the street. And that's why you bring workers from abroad. You argue that you're here to fight on behalf of the American worker, but when you have chances to help the American workers, you're making your clothes overseas and you're hiring your workers from overseas.
Go ahead, sir.
The other hotels during the season, they do the same thing. They take in a lot of people because you can't get them. They take in a lot of people. Long-term employees, we don't do that. But short-term employees, we have no choice but to do it. And other hotels in that very, very hot area. It is a very hot area. It is very, very hard to get people. But other hotels do the exact same thing. And just so you understand, just again, this is a legal process. This is a procedure. It's part of the law. I take advantage of that. There's nothing wrong with it. We have no choice.
All right.
Donald, you could resolve this issue very quickly by simply releasing the New York Times tape. Because, listen, maybe it's right that you didn't tell them you're misleading the American people.
The tapes were not on the subject.
If you didn't tell them that, the tapes will prove you're innocent.
Okay.
But if, in fact, you went to Manhattan and said, I'm lying to the American people, then the voters have a right to know.
No, you're the liar. You're the lying guy up here. You're the one. You're the one.
Release the
You're the one. Now, let me just tell you. Let me just say, excuse me. I've given my answer, Lion Ted. I've given my answer.
All right, let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at that. We have more to get to.
Gentlemen, the next topic to discuss is terrorism. Senator Rubio, ISIS is a big topic of conversation on Facebook. We have a map that shows the conversation about ISIS around the country. You propose sending a larger number of American ground troops to help defeat ISIS in Syria and Iraq. But military commanders say the biggest ISIS threat to Europe in particular now is coming from Libya, not Syria. So just to be clear, if you're for putting more U.S. ground troops in Iraq and Syria, are you also ready to send U.S. ground troops on the ground in Libya?
Well, Brett, what I've argued from the very beginning is ISIS, in order to defeat ISIS, you must deny them operating spaces. This is how ISIS, or any radical group for that matter, can grow. It's how al-Qaeda was able to carry out 9/11. Is that the Taliban gave them an operating space in Afghanistan. Today, that operating space has largely been based in Iraq and Syria, but I've been warning about the Libyan presence for the better part of 2 years. So they need to be targeted wherever they have an operating space. They do need to be defeated on the ground by a ground force made up primarily of Sunni Arabs themselves. This is a radical Sunni movement. They can only be defeated if they are driven out and the territories held by Sunni Arabs. But it will require a significant number of American special operators in combination with an increase in airstrikes. And that will include, if necessary, operating spaces in Libya, which in fact they are using to project into the Sinai against Egypt and ultimately into Europe as well.
Governor Kasich, would you put ground troops in Libya?
Well, first of all, just to be clear, not only did I serve for 18 years on the Defense Committee, more than anybody on this stage, but secondly, I was called into the Pentagon after 9/11 to help Secretary Rumsfeld with some of his difficulties. I will say, look, let me tell you what happened with Libya, and I pointed out in the last debate. Hillary Clinton worked aggressively to depose Muammar Gaddafi. We had no business doing it. He was working with us. He was cooperating with us. He denuclearized. And now they pushed him out, and now we have a fertile ground for ISIS. Fortunately, in Libya, there's only a few cities on the coast because most of Libya is a desert. The fact of the matter is we absolutely have to be, and not just with special forces, I mean, that's not going to work. Come on, you got to go back to the invasion when we pushed Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. We have to be there on the ground in significant numbers. We do have to include our Muslim Arab friends to work with us on that, and we have to be in the air. And it should be a broad coalition made up of the kinds of people that were involved when we defeated Saddam. Now, you got to be on the ground and in the air, both in Syria and Iraq. And at some point, we will have to deal with Libya. I am very concerned about ISIS getting their hands on the oil fields in Libya and being able to fund their operations. The fact is, cool, calm, deliberate, effective, take care of the job, and then come home. That's what we need to do with our military foreign policy.
Mr. Trump, just yesterday, almost 100 foreign policy experts signed on to an open letter refusing to support you, saying you're embracing expansive use of torture is inexcusable. General Michael Hayden, former CIA director, NSA director, and other experts have said that when you ask the U.S. military to carry out some of your campaign promises, specifically targeting terrorist families and also the use of interrogation methods more extreme than waterboarding, the military will refuse because they've been trained to turn down and refuse illegal orders. So what would you do as commander-in-chief if the U.S. military refused to carry out those orders?
They won't refuse. They're not going to refuse me, believe me.
But they're illegal.
Let me just tell you, you look at the Middle East, they're chopping off heads. They're chopping off the heads of Christians and anybody else that happens to be in the way. They're drowning people in steel cages. And now we're talking about waterboarding. This really started with Ted. A question was asked of Ted last 2 debates ago about waterboarding. And Ted was, having a hard time with that question, to be totally honest with you. They then came to me, what do you think of waterboarding? I said, it's fine. And if we want to go stronger, I'd go stronger too. Because frankly, that's the way I feel. Can you imagine these people, these animals over in the Middle East that chop off heads, sitting around talking and seeing that we're having a hard problem with waterboarding? We should go for waterboarding, and we should go tougher than waterboarding.
But targeting terrorist families?
And I'm a leader. I've always been a leader. I've never had any problem leading people. If I say do it, they're going to do it. That's what leadership is all about.
Even targeting terrorist families?
Well, look, when a family flies into the World Trade Center, a man flies into the World Trade Center, and his family gets sent back to where they were going, and I think most of you know where they went. And by the way, it wasn't Iraq. But they went back to a certain territory. They knew what was happening. The wife knew exactly what was happening. They left 2 days earlier with respect to the World Trade Center, and they went back to where they went, and they watched their husband on television flying into the World Trade Center, flying into the Pentagon, and probably trying to fly into the White House, except we had some very, very brave souls on that third plane. All right?
Senator Cruz, I
have no problem with it.
Senator Cruz?
Brett, I think the American people understand that yelling and cursing at people doesn't make you a tough guy. We need a commander-in-chief that, number one, will rebuild the military, just like Ronald Reagan did in 1981, coming out of the weak Jimmy Carter administration. He passed tax reform and regulatory reform. The economy took off. It generated millions in high-paying jobs, trillions in new revenue. He rebuilt the military, bankrupted the Soviet Union, and won the Cold War. As president, I will do the exact same thing with radical Islamic terrorism. We will rebuild this military so that it remains the mightiest fighting force on the face of the planet. And then, when I am commander-in-chief, every militant on the face of the earth will understand that if they go and join ISIS, if they wage jihad against the United States of America, they are signing their death warrant.
Senator Cruz, in 2013, you said you were open to the possibility that Edward Snowden had performed a considerable public service, you said back then, in revealing certain aspects of the NSA procedures. Many of your colleagues in the Senate, including Senator Rubio, called him a traitor. It took you until January of this year to call him a traitor and say he should be tried for treason. Why the change of heart, and why did it take you so long?
Well, Brett, as someone who spent much of his life in law enforcement, I believe you should start with the facts and evidence first before ending up with the verdict. When the news first broke of the United States government engaging in massive surveillance on American citizens, that was a very troubling development, and it's why the United States Congress acted to correct it. Now, at the same time, I said in that initial statement that if the evidence indicated that Edward Snowden violated the law, he should be prosecuted for violating the law. And indeed, since then, the evidence is clear that not only did Snowden violate the law, but it appears he committed treason. Treason is defined under the Constitution as giving aid and comfort to the enemies of America. And what Snowden did made it easier for terrorists to avoid detection. And Snowden's comments afterwards and his behavior afterwards, he fled to Russia, he fled to China. His conduct afterwards indicates that he was not a whistleblower, but instead he was undermining the ability to defend this country. But we need a president who isn't rash, who doesn't just pop off at the hip, but waits to see what the facts are and then acts to defend this country.
Mr. Trump, you've repeatedly deflected calls for specific national security or defense policy plans with the claim that you'll ask the best people when you become president and take their advice. So who are the best people? Can you reveal 2 or 3 names that you trust for national security?
I think Richard Haas is excellent. I have a lot of respect for him. I think General Kane is excellent. I think that I like Colonel Jacobs very much. I see him. I know him. I have many people that I think are really excellent, but in the end, it's going to be my decision. When you just asked the question about Snowden, I will tell you right from the beginning, I said he was a spy and we should get him back. And if Russia respected our country, they would have sent him back immediately. But he was a spy. It didn't take me a long time to figure that one out, believe me. But I would get the best people, people that I'd be comfortable with, and we will do the right thing.
Brett, it's very interesting to note, I think it's for the good of the record here, that they took a survey of Foreign Policy magazine, 700 foreign policy experts. Who would be the best person to conduct foreign policy of all the candidates in the race? I received 55% of the vote. Jeb Bush received 30% of the vote, and everybody else, none of them made double digits. And that's because you have to have the experience. And, you know, we hear about Ronald Reagan rebuilding the military. I was there when Ronald Reagan rebuilt the military. I worked with him. I was there when Ronald Reagan rebuilt the economy. I was there, and I worked with him. I knew Ronald Reagan. And I'll leave it right there with what comes after that. You can figure that one out.
Governor Kasich, thank you.
We're going to have more questions for the candidates right after this break. And during the commercial break, join us for a Facebook Live on the Fox News Facebook page and tell us what you think about tonight's debate in the comments section. Back in a moment.
Welcome back to the historic Fox Theater in downtown Detroit and the Republican presidential debate. Let's get right back to the questions.
Mr. Trump, one of the things people love about you is they believe you tell it like it is. But time and time again in this campaign, you have actually told the voters one thing only to reverse yourself within weeks or even sometimes days. We've teed up just 3 examples in a videotape similar to those we used with Senator Rubio and Senator Cruz in the last debate. The first is on whether the war in Afghanistan was a mistake. Watch.
What about in Afghanistan? Do you believe that American boots should stay on the ground in Afghanistan to stabilize the situation?
We made a terrible mistake getting involved there in the first place. That thing will collapse about 2 seconds after they leave, just as I said that Iraq was going to collapse after we leave.
About Afghanistan, you said we made a terrible mistake getting involved there in the first place.
We made a mistake going into Iraq. I've never said we made a mistake going into Afghanistan.
Our question was about Afghanistan. That day on October 6th, it was about Afghanistan.
Okay, wouldn't matter. I never said it.
Next, on whether we should accept
Should I respond to that first?
2 more, and then you'll have the floor. Next, on whether we should accept the Syrian refugees. On whether we should accept the Syrian refugees.
Do you object to migrants who are getting out of the Middle East and North Africa? Do you object to them coming to the USA?
I hate the concept of it, but on a humanitarian basis, with what's happening, you have to. It's living in hell in Syria. There's no question about it. They're living in hell.
Are you saying absolutely people from Syria, the Middle East, should we allow any of them into this country?
Look, from a humanitarian standpoint, I'd love to help, but we have our own problems. We have so many problems that we have to solve.
Most recently, on whether President George W. Bush lied to get us into the Iraq War.
They lied. Okay. They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none.
I don't know if he lied or not. He could have lied. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I guess you'd have to ask him.
And there are many other examples. So how is any of this telling it like it is?
Well, on Afghanistan, I did mean Iraq. I think you have to stay in Afghanistan for a while because of the fact that you're right next to Pakistan, which has nuclear weapons, and we have to protect that. Nuclear weapons change the game. And I was always against going into Iraq. In fact, believe me, I was always against it. There were some cases where I sort of, in one interview with a great friend of mine, and yours, Howard Stern, said that I said very meekly, long before we went in, I said very meekly, well, maybe, I don't know. By the time it got to that point, I was always against Iraq. But Afghanistan, I felt, and in that one, if you notice, I corrected it the second day. Okay? Second question?
There are several examples, Mr. Trump. We went through the Afghanistan being a mistake. Right. Within one day, you reversed yourself on Syrian refugees.
Let me explain that. You're right. Let me explain. First time the question had been put to me, it was very early on. The migration had just started, and I had heard that the number was a very, very small number. By the second day, 2 or 3 days later, I heard the number was going to be thousands and thousands of people. You know, when they originally heard about it, they were talking about bringing very, very small numbers in. And I said, begrudgingly, well, I guess maybe that's okay. It was not like, let's bring them in. Because I think we should build a safe zone. We should really, what we should be doing is building safe zones so they can stay in their own country and not go all over. And at least this way, we're not going to have the problem. That's what we have to do. But just to say, because I fully understand what you're asking, when I first heard the question, first time the question was ever asked to me, first time I really had known about the question, the migration had just started, I was very much like, okay. By the time I went back and studied it, and they were talking about bringing thousands and thousands, I changed my tune. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But the point I'm going for is you change your tune on so many things, and that has some people saying, what is his core?
Megyn, I have a very strong core. I have a very strong core. But I've never seen a successful person who wasn't flexible, who didn't have a certain degree of flexibility. You have to have a certain degree of flexibility. You can't, for instance, let's say on the second question, you can't say it's okay, and then you find out it's not okay, and you don't want to do anything. You have to be flexible because you learn. I mean, before I knew, the question was asked by Bill, and the next day or the couple of days later, the question was asked by I was asked by a number of people, actually. I was asked by Sean, but I was asked by a number of people. But by that time, the number had increased significantly.
Sean was the next day after Bill.
The next day. But I had learned. I mean, nobody had ever asked me the question. This was brand new. And I really mean it. You have to show a degree of flexibility. If you're going to be one way and you think it's wrong, does that mean the rest of your life you have to go in the wrong direction because you don't want to change?
Megyn,
but I think there's a
Megyn,
Go ahead, Governor.
Look, I did 200 meetings in New Hampshire. I don't know how many in Michigan now. And in these town halls, people come in, and they're very emotional meetings. And you know what they really want to know? If somebody tells them something, can they believe it? And the reason why people are so upset in this country is because politicians all the time tell them what they want to hear, and they go to Washington or they go to the state capitol, wherever, and they don't deliver on those promises. You know, when I ran for governor of Ohio, I said not only would we balance the budget, but we would cut taxes. People said it can't be done. I wouldn't have said it if I didn't believe it. We cut taxes in Ohio more than any governor in the country, $5 billion worth of tax cuts. We're now running a surplus in Ohio. But you see, what's getting in the hearts and souls of people is they want change, and they keep putting outsiders in to bring about the change. Then the change doesn't come. Then they put more outsiders in because we're putting people in that don't understand compromise, they don't understand policy, and people are getting more and more frustrated with the system, which is why we must pick somebody that has a record of achievement, not just talk, not just talk, but a record of achievement. That's how we'll restore credibility.
This is not just about flexibility.
Go ahead,
There's a difference between flexibility and telling people whatever you think you need to say to get them to do what you want them to do.
Right.
And that's what Donald has done throughout his career. Well, he did. That's why Trump University is so relevant here. I saw this video last week where he's sitting in front of a camera saying, we're going to hire the best people, and I'm going to handpick them, and they're going to be handpicked instructors, the best instructors in the world. One of them, by the way, was the manager at a Buffalo Wild Wing. And that's who they hired to do this. And people borrowed money, and they signed up for this fake university. And these people owe all of us money now, and they got nothing in return for it. But you were willing to say whatever you had to say to get them to give you their money.
Go ahead,
we're not going to do
We'll
that
find
to our
out
country.
when we have the trial. By the way, just so you understand, this is a case I could have settled very easily, but I don't settle cases very easily when I'm right. 98% approval rating. We have an A from
That's
the Better
false.
Business Bureau. We have a
That's
98% approval rating of
That's
people that
false.
took the course. We have an A from the Better Business Bureau, and people like it. Now, he's saying they didn't learn. We have many, many people that will be witnesses. Again, I don't settle cases. I don't do it because that's why I don't get sued very often, because I don't settle, unlike a lot of other people. We have a situation where we will win in court, but many of the people that are witnesses did tremendously well and made a lot of money by taking the course.
Go ahead, Senator.
But you're going to see. You're going to see. You don't know.
It's a D minus.
Go ahead. It's Senator Rubio.
It's a D minus.
No, no,
I've
it's
read
wrong.
the affidavit.
No. Before they had the information.
Go on my
Hold-
website, MarcoRubio.com.
Before they had the information.
Wait, Senator Rubio, stand by. Let him finish his point
Once
quickly,
they had
and then I'll give you the floor.
it is right now an A. Once they had the information, it got switched. The only reason it was a D was because we didn't care. We didn't give them the information.
of the people
When they
signed
got
up
the
after the
information, it became an A.
With respect,
Marco,
we went back.
you don't know.
We went back and looked at this.
Yes.
The rating from the Better Business Bureau was a D minus. That's the last publicly available rating in 2010, and it was a result of the number of complaints they had
But it
received.
was elevated to an A.
It was never elevated.
That's never
It
been
was
publicly
elevated
released.
to an A. I could
But-
give it to you.
but
I will
listen-
give it to you.
Let's just bring the viewers up to speed. Let's just bring the viewers up to speed.
It was elevated to an A.
Let me just set the record, and then you guys can have at it. There was Trump University, which was a business that you started, and it was marketed to many people. And now there is a class action of over 5,000 plaintiffs against you, Mr. Trump.
Right.
And it involves veterans, and it involves teachers, and it involves so-called little guys, working class and lower working class and middle class, who say that they were fleeced, who say it was a scam. The class has been certified, and in that case, you countersued the lead plaintiff, alleging that you were being defamed. That case was thrown out
And
against
the
her.
lead plaintiff is now getting out of the case because it's so bad for her.
But
She
what
signed
happened
a letter.
was-
Excuse me. The lead plaintiff signed a letter saying how great it was and is on tape saying how great it was.
Okay, but stand by. But what happened in that case was you countersued her. The court threw out your countersuit and made you pay almost $800,000 in legal fees of hers. And you made this same argument about 98% of the people being happy with Trump University. And that woman in particular signing a survey saying she liked it while someone was standing
She's
over her
getting out of
shoulder.
the case.
And this
She's
is what
trying to get out of the case now because her case
stand by.
doesn't hold up.
This is what the Court of Appeals found. They said that the plaintiffs against you are like the Madoff victims.
Oh, give
And
me
this is what the Court of Appeals said.
Give me a break.
They found that victims of con artists often sing the praises of their victimizers until they realize they have been fleeced.
You know what? Let's see what happens in court. This is a civil case. Very easy to have settled. Could settle it now. Very easy to have settled. This is a civil. Let's see what happens at the end of a couple of years when this case is over. Okay?
It's been going for 5 years.
Yeah, it's been going for a long time.
Go ahead,
Megan,
Senator.
I spoke to one
We'll
of
win the
victims
case.
yesterday. I spoke to one of the victims yesterday.
One of the
This gentleman, no, there's several. Obviously, there's so many, I
several.
can't talk to them every day. I spoke to one of them yesterday. They told me exactly what happened. They signed up for this course because they believe Mr. Trump was this fantastic businessman, that Donald's going to teach them all the tricks of the trade. They signed up. They paid $15,000 for this course. They were asked for additional money for this course. If they really wanted the real secrets of success, they had to pay even more money, and so they did. And you know what they got in these courses? Stuff you can pull off of Zillow. When they finally realized what a scam it was, they asked for their money back, and you refused to give them their money back.
I gave many
why don't
people
you
their
tonight,
money back.
Then
Megan,
why don't
let
you
me just-
tonight
let-
say you're
let
going
me
to give
just-
the money back?
let me
to
just
everybody
see.
who wants
Okay,
the
Senator
money?
Rubio, let him
Who's
answer.
Why doesn't he
at
make
the end
that
of a
pledge
few
right
years?
now?
Let him answer. Go ahead, Mr. Trump.
We will see who's right at the end of a few years. But almost all of the people, many people, signed what's called a report card at the end. Did you like the course? How did you like it? Almost all of them said it was terrific, okay? With letters, with this. Some of them are on tape saying it was terrific. Let's see what happens at the end of 3 years.
With respect, Mr. Trump, 1/3 of the plaintiffs in that case demanded refunds. So it's not the case that 98% were
I
pleased
gave
with what
some
they got.
refunds to people because if they asked for the refund at a certain period of time, and we gave refunds to people.
Okay.
But let's see what happens at the end of 3 years.
Understood.
Megan, I
Let's
just
see
wanna
who's
finish my
right.
Still a
thought on
pending
this.
litigation.
Here's
Go
why
ahead,
this
Senator.
is relevant.
Pending,
to
it's
this.
called pending litigation.
Megan, this is why this is relevant to this.
All right, Senator Rubio, then Senator
And this
Cruz.
is why,
Go ahead.
because he's trying to do to the American voter what he did to the people that signed up for this course. He's making promises. He has no intention of keeping it. And it won't just be $36,000 that they lose. It's our country that's at stake here. The future of the United States in the most important election in a generation, and he's trying to con people into giving them their vote, just like he conned these people into giving them their money.
Let me tell you, the real con artist, excuse me. The real con artist is Senator Marco Rubio, who was elected in Florida and who has the worst voting record in the United States Senate. He doesn't go to vote. He's absent. He doesn't go. Now, the people of Florida can't stand him. He couldn't get elected dog catcher. The people of Florida, and by the way, I know he's going to spend $25 million on ads. Without that, he wouldn't have a chance. He's 20 points down. The people in Florida wouldn't elect him dog catcher. He couldn't get any. He is right now 21 points down to me. And, you know, again, there'll be a lot of advertising. It's the only thing that might save him, but I doubt it.
I'm coming to you next, but go ahead.
He scammed the people of Florida. He scammed. He doesn't vote. He doesn't show up in the U.S. Senate. He doesn't vote. He scammed the people.
Understood.
He defrauded the people of Florida.
With respect, you've made that point. Go ahead.
There's no, as you can see in his answer, it's always the same thing.
You defrauded the
challenged
people
on a point.
Little Marco.
He's defrauded people out of things, and not just by the way, on the issue of Trump University. He had another development in Mexico that he had nothing to do with except his name on the building. People put money into that building.
Licensing.
They lost their money. Yeah, and the licensing, but you told them you own the building. So they gave him his money. They lost their money time and again.
Stand by.
He has cheated people out of
I will come back to you. Senator Cruz wants to weigh in. You're coming back. Go ahead.
Megan, let me just ask the voters at home, is this the debate you want playing out in the general election? The stakes in this election are too high. For 7 years, millions of Americans, we've been struggling. Wages have been stagnating. People are hurting. Our constitutional rights are under assault. And if we nominate Donald, we're going to spend the spring, the fall, and the summer with the Republican nominee facing a fraud trial, with Hillary Clinton saying, why did you give my campaign and my foundation $100,000?
It's a minor civil case.
And with Hillary Clinton pointing out that he supported her 4 times in her presidential race.
It's a minor civil case.
Donald, learn not to interrupt.
There are many civil cases.
Count to 10, Donald. Count to 10. Count to 10. The stakes are too high, and if you are one of the 65 to 70% of Republicans who recognize that nominating Donald would be a disaster, then I ask you to come join us. If you're supporting other candidates, come join us. We welcome you to our team because we've demonstrated not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 5 separate times we have beat Donald. And if you don't want him to be the nominee, then I ask you to stand with us as a broad coalition of people who believe in the Constitution, believe in freedom, and want to turn this country around.
Go ahead, Mr. Trump. The floor is yours.
I don't believe these politicians. All talk, no action. I'm standing here listening to I'm hearing him say about a percentage. CNN, he gets 15. That means 85%, based on what you're saying, of the people don't dig you, number one. Number one. Is that a correct statement? How do you get 50? Are you at 15 in the new CNN poll? Do you believe in CNN? I mean, I know we're with Fox. But CNN
I'll respond to you.
CNN spent a lot of money on a poll, just came out. I'm at 49. He's at 15. He tells me about 65% of the people. It's not 65% of the people. If you go by that, 85% of the people. Then he goes, we have 5. And, well, excuse me, I won 10 states. If you listen to him, it's like, I won 10 states. Everybody knows that on Super Tuesday, Trump was the winner. There wasn't one person that didn't say that. Even the 2 people on your left and right said we did a great job. So how does he take 5 and say it's better than 10?
Go ahead, sir.
I am by far the leader, but if you listen to a politician, he'll try and convince you otherwise.
Senator Cruz, go.
All right, well, Donald lives by the polls every day. He tweets by the polls. He's told us to look to the CNN poll. Well, that's a very good poll to look to because that CNN poll showed that head-to-head Donald Trump loses to Hillary Clinton by 8 points. He doesn't just lose close. He loses by 8 points. That same poll he told you to look at shows me beating Hillary Clinton. We cannot mess this up. And by the way, the last 4 polls in a row, when you nominate a candidate who literally certainly has been on every side of every issue, and in the course of this debate, maybe on 2 other sides before we're done. That's not how you win, and the stakes are too high.
All right, I'm going to let Mr. Trump. I'm going to let you respond to that, Mr. Trump. I'm then going to go to you, Governor. You're up next.
Me beating Hillary Clinton, and very, very easily.
Okay. Do you want to weigh in?
Look, honestly, when I see people at these meetings, these town halls, where we take massive questions, and I get to spend time with them. Last night, there was a woman that came to tell me about the loss of her 15-year-old son who took his own life. See, there's people in this country, and Ted's right, their wages haven't gone up for so long. They see the rich getting richer, they believe, and they're not moving, and they put their money in the bank, and they got no interest on their money. They receive none. And their sons or daughters are living in the basement because they can't get a good job after they rang up so much college debt. What people are hungry for is, who can fix this? People want to know, what can you do to solve the problems in Washington, to make sure that we have stronger job growth and better wages. But you know what else they're yearning for? They want to believe that they have the power to fix things where they live, and they want the power back so they can begin to do things in their community. Now listen, this has been going on for a long time here, and I appreciate the discussion back and forth. But there are a lot of people out there yearning for somebody who's going to bring America back, both at the leadership level and in the neighborhood, where we can begin to reignite the spirit of the United States of America. And let's stop fighting.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you.
Much more to come live from the Fox Theater, including where the candidates stand on the social issues facing the country. The Republican presidential debate continues in a moment.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Fox News Republican presidential debate. We want to get right back to the questions.
We are here in Detroit. The top issues in Michigan, according to Facebook, are displayed in a word cloud you're taking a look at. The second biggest issue is clean water. That, of course, is directly tied to the situation in Flint. Senator Rubio, Bernie Sanders, and Hillary Clinton have both been to Flint. They are both running ads in this state, focusing on that, focusing on supporting Flint and fixing the problems, showing images of people in Flint, thankful that they're there. Without getting into the political blame game here, where are the national Republicans' plans on infrastructure and solving problems like this? If you talk to people in this state, they are really concerned about Flint on both sides of the aisle. So why haven't GOP candidates done more or talked more about this?
Well, I know I've talked about it, and others in our campaign have talked about it, and other candidates have talked about it as well. What happened in Flint was a terrible thing. It was a systemic breakdown at every level of government, at both the federal and partially at both the state and partially at the federal level as well. And by the way, the politicizing of it, I think, is unfair, because I don't think that someone woke up one morning and said, let's figure out how to poison the water system to hurt someone. But accountability is important. I will say I give the governor credit. He took responsibility for what happened. And he's talked about people being held accountable and the need to change this, Governor Snyder. But here's the point. This should not be a partisan issue. The way the Democrats have tried to turn this into a partisan issue, that somehow Republicans woke up in the morning and decided, oh, it's a good idea to poison some kids with lead. It's absurd. It's outrageous. It isn't true. All of us are outraged by what happened, and we should work together to solve it. And there is a proper role for the government to play at the federal level in helping local communities to respond to a catastrophe of this kind, not just to deal with the people that have been impacted by it, but to ensure that something like this never happens again.
Thank you, Senator.
Governor Kasich, the city of Detroit has long suffered with urban blight, broken streetlights, dilapidated and vacant houses, and so on. In 2013, Detroit actually declared bankruptcy, which helped, but the schools here remain a big problem. They're $3.5 billion in debt and are some of the most troubled and poorly testing in the country. The kids too often go to classrooms that are unsafe, falling apart, infested with rodents and insects. Experts say the schools could go bankrupt by next month. Question to you. If the federal government bailed out the auto industry here in Detroit, should it also bail out the Detroit schools?
Well, look, first of all, I think the mayor now is controlling the schools. This is not much different than what happened in Cleveland, Ohio, where the African-American Democrat mayor the union and business leaders came to see me and said, would you help us to pass legislation to really create a CEO environment so that we can take control of the schools. We even invested in a buyout plan where we bought out the teachers who had been there a long time because there were so many young teachers who had been laid off who were so enthusiastic to get back in the schools. It worked beautifully. Cleveland's coming back. The Cleveland schools are coming back because of a major overhaul. It's the same thing that has to happen in all of our urban schools. And frankly, look, if I were president, I'd take 104 federal programs, bundle them into 4 buckets, and send it to the states, because fixing schools rests at the state and the local level, and particularly at the school board level. Now, I also believe that you need to introduce vocational education in those schools. You need mentoring in those schools. And you need to have a situation where people can have an alternative form to get a degree. And you need school choice, both vouchers and charter schools. All of those things can come together to help, Megan. But here's the bottom line, and I'll go quickly. We as adults have to fight in our neighborhoods, in our communities, for our children's education. Put the politics aside, and everyone in this room can play a role in lifting their schools and lifting the students who are in those schools, because too much politics gets in the middle of it. And where we focus as adults and put children first, we see tremendous results. And the people of this town are going to rise, and they need to be involved. Thank you.
For half a century, as you all know, Detroit was the symbol of America's industrial might. 300,000 manufacturing jobs in this city. At last count, there are now fewer than 30,000 manufacturing jobs here, and the unemployment rate in this city is 11%, twice the national average. Senator Cruz, I know that you have general plans for tax reform, but what specifically would you do to bring manufacturing jobs back to America and train residents of cities like Detroit to do those jobs?
Well, Chris, thank you for that question. Let me start by observing that Detroit is a great city with a magnificent legacy that has been utterly decimated by 60 years of failed left-wing policies. You know, Henry Ford revolutionized automobile manufacturing and brought automobiles to the middle class. During World War II, Detroit funded the arsenals of democracy to help us win World War II. In the 1960s, Detroit was the Silicon Valley of America. It had a population of 2 million people, had the highest per capita income in the country. And then for 50 years, left-wing Democrats have pursued destructive tax policies, weak crime policies, and have driven the citizens out. This city now has just 700,000 citizens. There are vacant homes, one after the other after the other. Crime has been rampant, and it is an outrage. And let me say to folks in the media, that is a story that the media ought to be telling over and over again, the destruction of left-wing policies and the millions who have hurt because of it.
Sure. Now, well, I was going to say, I'll give you 30 seconds to try to answer my question. What specifically would you do to bring manufacturing jobs back to Detroit and to train the residents here to do those jobs?
The way you bring manufacturing back to America is, number one, you lift the regulations. As president, I will repeal Obamacare, the biggest job killer in America. I will pull back the federal regulators, the EPA, and all the regulators that are killing small businesses and manufacturing. And my tax plan, which is a very, very detailed plan on the website, tedcruz.org, is what's called border adjustable. We get rid of all the taxes. We get rid of the corporate income tax and the death tax and the Obamacare taxes and the payroll tax. And we replace it with a 16% business flat tax that is border adjustable, which means all exports are entirely tax-free and all imports pay the 16% business flat tax. That's a 32% differential. What that will do, Chris, is bring millions of manufacturing jobs back to this country, bring the steel industry back to this country, create an environment where when we compete on a fair and level playing field, American ingenuity can beat anyone. But right now, the federal government isn't giving us a level playing field.
Thank you, Senator.
Gentlemen, the next series of questions will be on social issues. Governor Kasich, the last debate you were asked a question about religious liberty and a hypothetical situation where a same-sex couple approaches a cupcake maker to do their wedding. Here's what you said.
If you're in the business of selling things, if you're not going to sell to somebody you don't agree with, okay, today I'm not going to sell to somebody who's gay, and tomorrow maybe I won't sell to somebody who's divorced.
Governor, some faith leaders got nervous about that answer. Do gay marriage dissenters have rights?
Well, look, first of all, I try to be a man of faith every day as best as I can. And I try to focus in my faith on the do's, and I think the don'ts will take care of themselves once I get the do's right, which is humility and loving my enemy and caring for my neighbor. But secondly, look, you're in the commerce business, you want to sell somebody a cupcake, great, okay? But now if they ask you to participate in something you really don't like, that's a whole nother issue, okay? Another issue. Here's what I like to see happen. The Supreme Court ruled. I don't agree with the ruling. I'm in favor of marriage between, traditional marriage, a man and a woman. What I hope was going to happen after the Supreme Court ruling is things would settle down. If you go to a photographer to take pictures at your wedding and he says, I'd rather not do it, find another photographer. Don't sue them in court. You know what? The problem is, in our country, we need to learn to respect each other and be a little bit more tolerant for one another. And at the end of the day, don't go to court. Can't we have common sense in America? That's the way it used to be. And there was a book written called The Death of Common Sense. We need to bring it back. But at the end of the day, if somebody is being pressured to participate in something that is against their deeply held religious beliefs, then we're going to have to think about dealing with it with a law. But you know what? I'd rather people figure this out without having to put another law in the books and have more arguments in this country. Why don't we come together as a country, respect one another, love one another, and lift this country? I think that's what people want. So,
Senator
thanks
Cruz.
for asking.
Senator Cruz, the U.S. Supreme Court obviously declared same-sex marriage legal in all 50 states, a decision you have criticized. Given the current status of the law, do you believe a gay couple should be able to adopt?
Well, listen, adoption is decided at the state level, and I am a believer in the 10th Amendment in the Constitution. I would leave the question of marriage to the states. I would leave the question of adoption to the states. That's the way it's been for 2 centuries of our nation's history, until 5 unelected judges in an illegitimate and wrong decision decided to seize the authority over marriage and wrongfully tear down the marriage laws of all 50 states. Now, integrally connected to this is the question of religious liberty. And at the last debate, one of my colleagues on this stage said on the question of religious liberty and Supreme Court nominees that he'd be willing to compromise and negotiate. I can tell you, for me, there are areas that we should compromise on. Marginal tax rates, we can reach a middle ground on. But when it comes to core principles and convictions, when it comes to the Constitution and Bill of Rights, I can tell the men and women at home, I will never compromise away your religious liberty. And for me, Brett, religious liberty has been a lifelong passion. I've spent 2 decades defending religious liberty, including defending the 10 Commandments before the U.S. Supreme Court and winning, defending the Pledge of Allegiance before the Supreme Court and winning, and defending the Mojave Desert Veterans Memorial, a lone white Latin cross that was erected to honor the men and women who gave their lives in World War I. I represented 3 million veterans for free,
Senator,
defending that memorial, and we won 5-4 before the Supreme
Senator, thank you. Senator Cruz definitely avoided saying your name, Mr. Trump, but I think he was referring to you and your religious liberty answer. Would you like to respond?
I have nothing to say. I mean, I generally speaking agree with what he said. I would have certainly have rather left it to the states. I was always in favor. I was very surprised when they came up with that decision. I would have preferred had it been left to the states, and I think most people would have preferred that.
Senator Rubio, the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, a conservative icon, obviously pointed out in United States versus Heller that, like most rights, the Second Amendment right is not unlimited. Just like the First Amendment doesn't allow you to go into a theater and yell fire, he said the Second Amendment leaves room to regulate guns. So do you agree with Justice Scalia? And if so, what limits would you draw around the Second Amendment?
As few as possible. The Second Amendment, as I've said before, is not a suggestion. It is the constitutional right of every American to protect themselves and their families. It is a right that it is the Second Amendment for a reason. It is right after the defense of the freedom of speech for a reason. For clearly the founders of our nation understood, and the framers of the Constitution understood, that you cannot have life and you cannot have liberty and you cannot pursue happiness if you are not safe. And the Second Amendment, when people talk about gun laws, what they need to realize is criminals don't follow gun laws. They're criminals. By definition, they ignore the law. But the gun rights of Americans, if you are talking to a law-abiding citizen and a gun owner like myself, if you pass a law, I will follow whatever the law is. A criminal will not do it. They will continue to pursue these guns on the black market, where they then go out and commit crimes and they steal guns from each other. Gun laws are not effective. They simply do not provide for safety, but they do, however, ensure that law-abiding people don't have access to weapons to protect themselves and guns to protect themselves. But criminals will always be well armed. They don't care about the law. They don't follow the law. We will protect the Second Amendment when I'm President of the United States.
Mr. Trump, you were once a supporter of an assault weapons ban. So do you think there should be any restrictions on the Second Amendment?
I'm a big defender of the Second Amendment. And if you look at what's happened, whether it's in California where you had the 14 people killed, whether it's in Paris, which, by the way, has the toughest gun laws in the world, and 130 people killed, many, many people in the hospital, gravely injured. They will be dying. Many people will be dying in addition. If we had guns, or if they had guns on the other side of the room with the bullets going in the opposite direction, you would not have had 130 people killed. That I can tell you right now. So I'm a very, very big supporter of the Second Amendment.
But in 2000, you wrote in your book, I generally oppose gun control, but I support the ban on assault weapons.
I don't support it anymore. I do not support the ban on assault.
Senator Cruz, any limits to the Second Amendment?
Well, listen. Unlike Donald, I would not support banning firearms. In that instance, Bill Clinton banned many of the most popular firearms in America. And by the way, the study showed that ban did nothing to reduce violent crime. It just took away the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. And let me point out, you know, it is easy for political candidates to have rhetoric and say, I support the Second Amendment. But you cannot say that and at the same time say what Donald just said, which is that on the question of Supreme Court nominees, he wants to compromise and reach a middle ground with Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer. That's what he said in the last debate. Any justice that Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer sign off on.
I did not say that.
And I would point out Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer are both Democrats that Mr. Trump has written checks to repeatedly. Any justice that those two sign off on is going to be a left-wing judicial activist who will undermine religious liberty, and we are one vote away from the Hillary decision being overturned, which would effectively erase the Second Amendment from the Bill of Rights. If you care about the Second Amendment, then you need to ask, who on this stage do you know will appoint principled constitutionalists to the court and not cut a deal with your Second Amendment rights?
Mr. Trump, so we're listening to the all-talk, no-action politician, and he was the primary supporter of John Roberts, who gave us Obamacare. No, it's not. You take a look. He was the primary supporter. He pushed John Roberts and pushed him, and Bush ultimately appointed him. He got appointed, and when it came his time to raise his hand and kill Obamacare, not once but twice, he let us down, and he did the wrong thing. This is the man that was the primary supporter. And you can read Law Journal, you can read whatever you want to read. I've read plenty of it. There was no stronger supporter of John Roberts than him, and it was a very, very big mistake.
Quickly, Senator Cruz.
You know, Donald has a tenuous relationship with the truth. I wrote one op-ed supporting President Bush's nomination after he made it. I would not have made that nomination. But let me point out,
not what you say in the op-ed. That is not what you said in the op-ed.
Donald, please, I know it's hard not to interrupt.
But it's not what you said in the op-ed.
Breathe.
Lion Ted.
Breathe. You can do it. You can breathe. I know it's hard. I know it's hard, but just...
When they're done with the yoga, can I answer a question?
You cannot. I really hope that we don't see yoga on this stage.
Well, he's very flexible, so you never know.
Brett, you cannot, in fact, care about conservative Supreme Court justices and support Jimmy Carter for president. You cannot care about conservative Supreme Court justices and support John Kerry for president, as Donald did. You cannot care about conservative Supreme Court justices and support Harry Reid for Senate Majority Leader. And you cannot care about conservative Supreme Court justices and write 4 checks to Hillary Clinton for her to be president if you care at all about the Second Amendment or religious liberty or anything else.
Gentlemen, we're going to move on. Thank you very much. We want to talk about some more policy questions coming up.
And coming up, the candidates tackle foreign policy. But first, during the commercial break, join us for a Facebook Live on the Fox News Facebook page and tell us what you think about tonight's debate in the comment section. Stay with us. More to come.
Welcome back, everybody. We want to get right back to the questions.
And gentlemen, we're going to focus for a bit now on foreign policy. Senator Rubio, you like to take a shot at Mr. Trump on the campaign trail, saying that negotiating a hotel deal in a foreign country is not foreign policy. The other day, you even compared him to Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, as lunatics trying to get a hold of nuclear weapons. Please tell Mr. Trump why he's unprepared to be commander-in-chief.
Well, first of all, I think as we've seen throughout this campaign, Donald has not shown a seriousness about the issues of foreign policy. He just simply hasn't. Whether it was the structure of our military, even today he was asked the question about the issue of commanders not following his lead on killing the family of terrorists. And his answer basically was, if I tell them to do it, they're going to do it. Now, that's just not true. Foreign policy is not only consequential, I think much of our future now depends on it. You know, I see a lot of young people at my events around the country. I feel great when they come. And I always tell them that despite the hardships of the moment, I honestly believe that today's millennials have a chance to be the greatest generation we've had in 100 years. I really do. Because the world today has hundreds of millions of people that can afford to be their clients, their customers, their partners, people they collaborate with. But that won't happen if the world is dangerous and it's unstable. And that will require strong American leadership. The next president of the United States is going to have 8 years of a mess of a foreign policy to clean up. That's why it can't be Hillary Clinton. And quite frankly, that's why it can't be someone who simply has not shown the intellectual curiosity or the interest in learning about these very complicated issues. And Donald simply hasn't.
Mr. Trump, your response.
Well, let me just say this. I've gotten to know Marco over a period of time. Believe me, he is not a leader. Believe me.
But that doesn't answer the question.
He didn't interrupt you. Let him talk.
Is not a leader. And frankly, when I say they'll do as I tell them, they'll do as I tell them. And it's very simple. It's very simple. We are in a very dangerous place. We have a depleted military, totally depleted. We have, by the way, our vets are treated horribly. We're going to take care of our vets. We're going to start taking care of our vets properly, like we should. But we're going to build up our military, and we're going to get the equipment we want, not the equipment that's sold to us by somebody that gave him and not the governor campaign contributions, okay? We're going to get the equipment that the generals and the soldiers want. I will prove to be a great leader. And, you know, it's very interesting. We talk about the polls. Every single poll, when it comes to ISIS and the military and the border, say by far Trump is the best.
Mr. Trump, your time is up.
Yeah, I just want a couple points. Once again, he was pressed on a policy issue to show his understanding of the foreign policy, and his reaction was just to attack somebody else with a name. Here's the bottom line, and I'm going to repeat it again. The world today is as complicated and as complex as it has been certainly in the lifetime of anybody here today. You indeed do have a lunatic in North Korea with nuclear weapons. You indeed do have the Chinese government taking over the most important shipping lane in the world. And Vladimir Putin, who you've expressed admiration for.
Wrong.
Donald, well, you've expressed admiration.
Wrong. I know
someone you see
it.
as a strong leader.
Wrong.
Is now
he
dividing
said very
Europe
good
up
things about me, and I said
right,
that's wonderful.
I'm going to finish my statement here. Yeah, and he's also sowing instability in the Middle East. You have Iran is going to get $100 billion of sanctions relief. You have radical jihadists spreading all over the world. This is a time for seriousness on these issues. You have yet to answer a single serious question about any of this. Will you give us a detailed answer about foreign policy anytime you're asked on it?
Let me just tell you, first of all, I've been hearing this man so long talking about Putin. Putin said about me. I didn't say about Putin. Putin said very nice things about me.
And I say very nicely, wouldn't it be nice if actually we could get along with Russia, we could get along with foreign countries, instead of spending trillions and trillions of dollars? You're talking about Flint, Michigan. You're talking about places. We need to rebuild the infrastructure of our country. Wouldn't it be nice if we got along with the world, and maybe Russia could help us in our quest to get rid of ISIS, et cetera, et cetera?
Gentlemen, you both have had a chance to talk. You both have had a chance to talk a couple of times. I'd like to move on to Senator Cruz. Senator, we have some breaking news tonight. North Korea's dictator, Kim Jong-un, has ordered that country's nuclear weapons to be made ready at a moment's notice. And this comes just hours after the UN Security Council approved the toughest sanctions in 2 decades against that country. Assume you're President Cruz tonight. What do you do?
Well, you're right. The news is very disturbing that Kim Jong-un has put their nuclear weapons on ready state. I'm glad that we're sending another carrier group to the South China Sea. I'm glad that Congress passed sanctions on North Korea. But this is all the result of the failures of the Clinton administration 2 decades ago that negotiated a deal with North Korea, lifting the sanctions, allowing billions of dollars to flow in, and they used that money to develop nuclear weapons in the first place. Now we're in a much harder position. When you have a lunatic with nuclear weapons, to some extent it constrains your options. We need to be moving the carrier group to the South China Seas. We need to be putting in place missile defense, such as the THAAD missile defense system in South Korea. We need to be pursuing space-based missile defense. One of the advantages of space-based missile defense is that if you have a missile launch in North Korea or you have a missile launch in Iran, a space-based missile defense can take out 1 or 2 or 3 missiles before it can cross over and do damage. And we also need to be putting pressure on China, because North Korea is effectively a client state of China. All of that will happen with a strong commander-in-chief that is devoted to keeping this country safe.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Kasich, I want to move back to the debate that we heard earlier about Vladimir Putin in December, after Vladimir Putin had some nice things to say about Donald Trump, calling him bright and talented. Your campaign ran a video suggesting that Trump might name the Russian president as its running mate. Here's a clip.
I'll have to see this.
If elected, Trump promised that the dictatorial duo would, quote, make tyranny great again.
I think I'd get along very well with Vladimir Putin. I just think so.
That was your campaign video, sir.
That was a pretty good one.
Well, okay. If I may ask my question, I think you were kidding.
Yeah.
But it was your video. And the serious question is, because the suggestion is, do you think that Donald Trump is naive about the threat that Vladimir Putin represents?
I'm not biting. Let me just take you around the world, okay? Look, I'm going to take you very quickly. In Russia, we need to tell them we're going to arm the Ukrainians with defensive lethal weapons. And we're going to tell Putin, if you attack anybody in Eastern Europe in NATO, you attack Finland and Sweden, which is not in NATO, consider it an attack on us. And he will understand that. Secondly, I would tell the Chinese, you don't own the South China Sea. Stop hacking us. And we're going to brief up our cyber command, and we're going to be in a position to be able to take out your systems if you continue to do this. Now, let's move over into the Middle East. The Egyptians, they know they're on their last legs there because of the attack from ISIS. Jordanians really have been our friends. They know that they're at risk. So do the Saudis. So do the Gulf states. They are our allies, really, or have similar aims. We need to bring them closer to us. Turkey, a critical avenue to the Middle East. We have to bring them towards the West and not towards the East. And we have to be joint and have good human intelligence. That's sort of a semi-trip around the world, and if you gave me more time, I'd finish the trip.
Governor, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, a final question and closing statements. And take a look at this. The volume of conversation on Facebook surrounding the remaining candidates over the last month. Whether that conversation is good or bad, Donald Trump clearly dominates the field. We'll be back with more of the Republican presidential debate live from Detroit.
You know, I will support whoever is the Republican nominee for president.
Mr. Trump, I'm going to ask you a version of the same question. As we saw today with Mitt Romney, the Never Trump movement is gaining steam. Some people are talking about contributing millions of dollars to try to stop you. Again today, you raised the possibility that you might run as an independent if you feel you're treated unfairly by the Republican Party. So I'm going to phrase the question that the other three people on the stage just got. Can you definitively say tonight that you will definitely support the Republican nominee for president, even if it's not you?
Even if it's not me? Let me just start off by saying something.
30 seconds, sir.
Okay, that I'm very, very proud of. Millions and millions of people have come to the Republican Party over the last little while. They've come to the Republican Party, and by the way, the Democrats are losing people. This is a trend that's taken place. It's the biggest thing happening in politics, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. And I'm going to give them some credit, too, even though they don't deserve it. But the answer is yes, I will.
Yes, you will support the nominee of the party.
Yes, I will.
Candidates, it's now time for your closing statements. Governor Kasich, we'll start with you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I love being here in Michigan, and I want to say to all of you here that I have a record of being able to solve some of the biggest problems. It's not just talk and it's not theory. I did it in Washington by helping people get into a healthier economic situation. I've done it in Ohio, and as we've made progress in Ohio, we've left no one behind. We've not left behind the mentally ill, the drug addicted, the working poor, the developmentally disabled, and we have raised our minority community. And as President of the United States, I will go back to Washington. I will take the formulas that I used, and I will fix the problems in Washington, and you'll work with me as I send you power to fix your communities, your neighborhoods, your state, and together we'll restore the spirit of America, and I know you want that. Thank you.
Senator Rubio, 30-second closing statement.
I know this has been an unusual election cycle as it continues, and there's a lot of problems in America, and people are truly hurting. But this election is not just about confronting our problems, it's also about embracing our opportunities. I believe the 21st century holds the potential to be the greatest era in the history of the United States if we get this election right and if we act now. If we do what needs to be done, we can leave our children as the freest and most prosperous Americans that have ever lived. And the 21st century can be the greatest era in the amazing story of America. So I ask everyone to vote for me and join our effort at MarcoRubio.com.
Senator Cruz, your closing statement.
I want to talk to every soldier and sailor and airman and Marine. I want to talk to every mom and dad and sister and brother and son and daughter of someone fighting for this country. For 7 years, you've had a commander-in-chief that doesn't believe in you, that sends you into combat with rules of engagement that tie your arms behind your back. That is wrong, it is immoral, and in January 2017, it will end. I want to also talk to all the police officers and firefighters and first responders who have been left behind with this president. Starting in January 2017, I will have your back.
Mr. Trump, your closing statement.
Thank you. I am going to bring jobs back to the United States like nobody else can. We're going to fix our very depleted military. We're going to take care of our vets. We're going to strengthen our borders. And you're going to be very, very proud of this country in just a few years if I'm elected president. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And that'll do it for the 11th Republican primary debate of the 2016 presidential race. But the night is not over yet.
Not by a long shot. A special edition of the O'Reilly Factor is next. And remember, Fox News has the race for the White House covered all the way to the conventions and on to the general election.
Our thanks to Detroit and the crowd here. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great evening.
Is on live at 11. I don't know who this guy has been following me around all day. Now look, we're standing mano a mano here. You're not going to be taller than me. Fair debate?
I thought it was fair. I thought they did a really good job. I enjoyed it. It was tough but fair.
Who's your main competition, in your opinion, going forward? Come on. No, stop.
Well, Ted Cruz seems to have, he's second.
Yeah.
Quite a distance away, but he's second. Marco would be third. The governor would be fourth.
And you think that's the way it's going to shake?
Well, that's the way it is right now. It can change very rapidly.
All right. You look a little tired. You tired?
No, not at all.
No? You good? Romney hit you hard today. Are you surprised?
He's a failed candidate.
I know. Were you surprised?
No, I'm just telling you. He did a horrible job. He wants to become relevant again. He really let us down. 4 years ago, I supported him. I helped him a lot. He really, really let us down. He knows I feel it, and I guess he felt it. He said that. But I think my retort was far stronger than his. And if you look on Twitter and if you look at what's happening, I think he made a fool out of himself, if you want to know the truth.
Why do you think he did it?
Because I think he's a jealous guy, and I think he'd like to run, but he didn't have the guts to run this time, and he probably should have. I don't think he would have done very well, and I told him he was a choker. I mean, he's a choke artist, and that's what happened with his last. You
think he's angling to go into the convention if you don't have enough delegates?
Well, he might be, and that's why he didn't support anybody. But he doesn't have it. He will be beaten so badly by Hillary Clinton, your head will spin. So he doesn't have it.
When you hear guys like Romney, and there are not a few of them, there are many of them, your own party.
Right.
Why do you think you engender so much loathing from them?
Well, and love. You didn't say the second one,
you have plenty of diehard supporters.
65%, and believe me, a big portion. If you look at all of the polls, they're coming in now above 50. And I will tell you, a tremendous amount of the party loves what we're doing. You see the numbers of people, millions of people are joining the Republican Party. You can't say that's happening.
But you've got a lot of detractors and people like Romney who comes out.
Once it's over, I think people are going to get, not everybody, but people are going to get along with me very well. I'm very much a unifier.
What about your personality engenders these people to come after you?
I tell it like it is. I tell the truth. Our country needs that.
But Romney feels that you're a danger to the country.
I don't think he feels that at all.
You think he's a phony?
I would say he's a phony, yeah. I mean, he doesn't feel that at all.
You think this is all contrived? He doesn't have any sincere...
I would say mostly contrived, yeah. I think he feels very badly about his poor run. He ran very poorly. He made a fool out of himself. Should have won that election. He went away for the final 4 weeks.
But why would he come back now, though? I mean, he's been out for so long.
Well, I was hitting him hard because when he was going to come back, I was saying he was a choke artist. I mean, he choked. He choked in the last campaign. I mean, he really lost. Look, he lost the Senate, and he really lost twice for president, not just once. So he has 3 in a row. The worst guy we could have would be him. And then ultimately, he went to see Jeb Bush, and he was actually afraid of Jeb Bush.
Yeah, you told that story in Maine. So it's just jealousy on his part?
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. You'd have to ask him, but I think he made a fool out of himself. He shouldn't have done it.
Well, your supporters are going to stay with you. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's not going to change their mind. But you need to get, on our calculations, about 30 million people who are not supporting you now to support you to defeat Hillary Clinton.
I think I'm going to defeat Hillary because we're going to win Michigan. We might win New York. See, when I run, I have a whole different calculus. I have a chance of winning New York. Nobody else does. We have a big chance of winning New York. We're going to win places like Michigan. I'm going to win Pennsylvania. I'm going to win Ohio. I'm going to win a lot of states. I'm going to win Florida. Florida is my second home. We're going to win places that nobody else is going to win. And we're going to add states that nobody else can even think of.
But the downside is that the Democrats are going to come over and they're going to, look, you saw what happened with your own guys tonight, the Republican Party, the Trump University stuff, the flip-flopping on issues, the campaign support for Carter and these people. You know, that's all going to be in play.
Fine, look, it's fine. In the meantime, I have 49% in the polls. Nobody's even close. I mean, I'm at 49, they're at 15. So, you know, you can bring up, why don't you bring up a few more things?
Well, I mean, it's my job.
It's called politics, and I'm fine with it. And if you look at what I've done, I've built an unbelievable company. You know that. I know that. Most of the people know that. And what I'll do is let it be known. I have buildings all over the world. We have jobs going up all over the world. Very few people have built a company like I've built.
All right. And now you get mad at guys like me when I ask you the negative questions.
Well, I think you've become very negative. I do think.
Yeah, me?
Yeah.
Why? Why would I do that?
I don't know. Who knows? You'll have to ask your psychiatrist. But I think you've become very negative.
Toward you?
Yeah. You know Melania? Right?
Yeah, the better half.
It's true.
But it's not even close. Well, but I want to get back to this.
And my boy Eric.
I think I've been very fair to you. Very fair.
You've been fair, but I think you get a little bit carried away with yourself, frankly.
You want to give me an example?
No, I'm not going to give you an example.
Come on.
It's not. We just finished a debate, which I hear I just won based on all of the polls again. I won a lot of debates, but I really had a good time tonight. I would say that.
When you're thinking ahead I was surprised to hear you say you're going to support if they give you the under table thing at the convention, so you come in with not enough delegates, okay, and they don't give you the nomination even though you have the popular vote by far.
Yeah.
You're gonna accept that?
Well, look, I don't want to run as an independent. I love the Republican. The Republican Party has been pretty nice to me.
I know you pretty well.
And the people, I tell you what, the people. But you have to remember, I brought millions of people into the Republican Party. That's why I'm doing so well.
That's
why we have
right.
so many people. But the best chance of winning is for me to run as a Republican. I will beat Hillary Clinton. These people will not beat Hillary.
Okay, so you're gonna, even if they give you the runaround, even if they do bad things to you at the convention, it's possible.
It's always possible. The best chance of winning is to win as a Republican, run as a Republican, and win. And I am far ahead of everybody. I'm leading by a lot. I think we're going to do very well over the next 2 weeks also. People were surprised at the amount of victory, the size of the victory. Even you were surprised.
I wasn't surprised.
Okay,
Come on now.
Super Tuesday was great.
From the very beginning.
Super Tuesday was great. We're going to have other Super Tuesdays. So
from the very beginning, I understood your appeal.
Well, there is truth.
Yeah, Melania.
There is truth.
Did you see the numbers on Greta last night from Melania? Did you see those numbers?
Were they very good?
Yeah, they were much better than your numbers.
Oh, wow. Right? I'm happy about that.
So maybe Melania runs for VP.
I think that's good.
Yeah,
that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea.
She kicked your butt on Greta.
That's okay.
All right, she did.
Okay. Where was that?
All right.
That's good.
All right,
she did. By the way, she did a great job.
Look, it's nice of you to lead off the factor at 11. Okay. And if I'm unfair, you come on and tell me. You give it to me, man.
I will.
All right.
Promise.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to run back up to the set, and we're going to talk to Marco Rubio, then Ted Cruz, and then we're going to do John Kasich, and then Goldberg, and I think Dana Perino. Is she standing by? All of that coming up as the factor continues live from Detroit.
For the last year, Donald Trump has basically mocked everybody with personal attacks. He's done so to people that are sitting on the stage today. He's done so about people that are disabled. He's done it about every other candidate in this race. So if there's anyone who's ever deserved to be attacked that way, it's been Donald Trump for the way he's treated people for the last campaign.
We continue now from Detroit with this live post-debate factor. Pleased to have Senator Marco Rubio. Are you surprised that Donald Trump still is leading after all the incoming he has taken? Mitt Romney today, John McCain, the list, as I just told Mr. Trump, and he wasn't happy to hear it. There's a lot of people that just don't like him. Are you surprised that he still leads?
Yeah, he's been very good at dominating media. I mean, getting media to pay attention to him. You look at the coverage. CBS, the head of CBS said this a couple of days ago, that Donald Trump might not be good for America, but he's good for CBS because of their ratings. So I think that factors into this. But I think now that the race is narrowed, people are starting to pay attention. And look, he's a very charming guy. I mean, you can see why he gets so much attention. He's funny. He's got these one-liners. But we're talking about the presidency of the United States here. Tonight, he had no serious solution on the debt. I think he was exposed in one instance with a graph that showed the numbers don't add up on the debt. It shows he has no solutions on foreign policy. His only reaction was to attack me as little Marco. And after a while, people start to realize this is the presidency.
Do you think, though, they're going to start to realize it, though? That's,
I do. And I hope so for the sake of our republic. Because what's at stake here for our country is very important. This is the most important election in a generation. The world is growing incredibly dangerous. We were reminded of that again tonight with what's happening in North Korea. You can't elect someone who says, I'll get there and then I'll figure it out.
Well, and I might remind the people in North Korea, the crazy dictator says he's arming his nuclear devices. But I'm a little amazed that Donald Trump's support is so rock solid at the 35 to 45 level. This new CNN poll was very high for him. And I don't think those people are going to give him up, no matter what you say or what Mitt Romney says or what I say. And I'm fair to Trump, but they're not going to give him up.
Yeah, I don't agree. In Virginia, I was down like 20 points, and we just spent 4 or 5 days explaining to people what the situation was. We finished almost tied, basically.
And you would have won if Kasich hadn't been there.
Well, you know, that is what it is. My point is that I do think that once people begin to think about it, look, he taps to an anger. But he's done this his whole career. You know, he tells you what you want to hear to get you to do what he wants you to do. In this case, it's not sign up for Trump University. In this case, it's to give you his vote to become the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the United States and the president of the most important country on the planet. So this process will continue forward. I honestly believe that as the further we go into this, the more voters begin to learn about his lack of policy. Tonight, he changed his position on multiple issues. I think he'll be held to account for some of that.
Do you have the time? Well, Florida, obviously, on the 15th, you got to win Florida. So you're going to have to spend a lot of time there, obviously, and a lot of money. And he told, $25 million. Is that true? $25 million you're going to spend in there?
No, we're not. I don't know what other people are doing in Florida. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I can tell you in our campaign, of course, we're going to spend time. Florida's an important state.
Right.
And we're going to win Florida.
How do you know you're going to win?
I just know the people of Florida. And I've won there before. We know how to win there. We know how people are going to vote there. When it's all said and down. I don't believe these polls you see. I can guarantee you that public poll that was out there is not accurate. It's close. It's going to be a tight race. Yeah. Florida's a collection of people from all over the country. So it is a unique state. It's a swing state for a reason. Even in our own party, it is.
What are you going to hit in Florida? Florida's an interesting state because a lot of people from other states go to Florida. Right. Yeah. No state income tax, good place to live. And they're residents now in Florida. What is the theme in Florida that is going to allow you to overtake a Donald Trump?
I think in Florida in particular, what you have are people that are coming to get away from what's wrong somewhere else. It's not just the weather. It's a lot of people coming from the Northeast to get away from incompetent and broken government, people that are coming from other countries to get away from that as well. So there's a real understanding in Florida of how important and unique America is, but how easy it is to lose something like that with the wrong leadership. So what we want to do over the next few weeks is, number one, remind people of what is at stake in this election. We're going to continue to talk about policy. Didn't get a lot of media attention, but we continue to talk about our policies. And I ask people to go on MarcoRubio.com. You'll see we have policies, serious stuff on all the issues before us. But we're also going to point out the fact that what Donald Trump says he's going to do for America is exactly what he's telling people he's going to do for them in his business career. And it hasn't always worked out very well for people that believe him.
Do you regret the schoolboy stuff with Trump? The wet pants business and all that?
It's not what we do. I don't regret it in the sense that, I'll tell you why. Because if anyone deserves to be hit for that, it's him. He's literally spent a year doing that.
You know what I always say on this program, and I'm sure you watch every night? Bad behavior doesn't justify other bad behavior.
Yeah. If I don't do it, it'll be because I don't want to do anything, for example, that Jesus wouldn't be proud of, to be honest with you, or that my kids would look at and say, I don't want you to keep doing that. But if anyone deserved to be hit that way.
Do you feel you had to do that, though, to get down?
Donald has insulted everyone you can imagine. He's made fun of disabled people.
Yeah, we all know that.
Made fun of women. We know the litany.
We're talking about you now.
There comes a point where you have to stand up to someone, and you have to make clear that if you want to make this about personal attacks, there's a long list of personal attacks that can be made about you. So it's not that
are you going to continue to do that?
Well, that's our plan, is to run our campaign. If it's appropriate, we're definitely going to continue talking about what he's doing now with the con job and the scam he's trying to pull off, where he's trying to do to the American voter what he did to the people at Trump University, promising something that he never intended to deliver on.
I don't know if it's going to work, but
it better work for the sake of the conservative movement.
I'll tell you what, this is the most amazing campaign I've ever covered. I've done this for 35 years, and I have never seen anything like this. And it's going to, between Hillary and whoever you guys who's ever going to win, it's going to be unbelievable there, too. Senator, wish you the best. We thank you for walking on up here and talking to us.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
See you down the road. Thank you. All right, so next up, we're going to have Ted Cruz, and then John Kasich, and then Goldberg, and then Dana Perino. So we hope you stay tuned. Continuing now with this Factor at 11 live from Detroit after the debate. And here we have Senator Ted Cruz from Texas. I appreciate you coming in. I'm going to ask you some of the same questions I asked Mr. Trump and Senator Rubio. Are you surprised at Trump's durability? Today, Romney hit him. McCain's hit him. Lindsey Graham's hit him. He just doesn't seem to falter. Does that surprise you?
Well, listen, a year ago, no one predicted the trajectory of this race. But I think what we've seen in the course of a year is the field winnowing dramatically. I mean, as you know, we started with 17 candidates. It was a crowded field. We're now down to just 4 on that stage. And I think Super Tuesday actually really narrowed the field even more than that. In that, you're right. Trump has a base of support, probably 25%. That, as he put it, he could go out on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and they probably wouldn't leave.
But are you surprised about that? I mean, he doesn't seem to no matter what you throw at the man, And I think his support is 35%.
Well, it's a little bit celebrity. It's a little bit pizzazz.
I'm surprised. I got to tell you.
But I think he also has a ceiling of 35 to 40%. And so the more the field narrows, the more vulnerable he is. It's why I think Super Tuesday was so important. Our campaign has beaten him in 5 states, 5 of the 15. We're the only one that has beaten him over and over and over again. And the way, if folks at home don't want to see Donald Trump as the nominee, and that's about 65% of Republicans, then what we're seeing is more and more of them coming and joining our campaign. People who had been supporting Jeb Bush or Chris Christie or Ben Carson or Marco Rubio coming and joining our campaign.
The polls don't reflect that yet, Senator. We'll see.
Well, but Super Tuesday polls did. I mean, we won
in the conservative states because you're a very conservative senator.
Well, but let's be clear. We beat him in Iowa, but we also beat him in Texas, in Oklahoma, Alaska, and Minnesota. Minnesota's not a conservative state, and we beat Donald in Minnesota.
Right. Rubio won Minnesota, but you came in second.
Right.
The Trump phenomenon seems to have changed politics. Would you say it has changed it? And let me tell you how. Half the debate tonight was zinging Trump.
Yeah.
Look, half the debate.
He has a ton of momentum. I wouldn't disagree with that at all. And his personality, it is so loud and flamboyant that it changes the nature of the conversation. But I do think that the voters are asking, okay, who do I actually trust to do what he's saying? And who's capable of doing that job?
I don't know if they're asking that or not. I think they're almost so overwhelmed by the emotion and the anger that they hold.
I think the 30 to 35%, but I think 2/3 of the party recognizes that nominating Donald Trump would be an absolute disaster. We'd get clobbered. He loses to Hillary Clinton.
You really believe that?
Yes. I think
you believe that if Trump is the nominee in Cleveland, he gets his butt kicked by Hillary Clinton?
He pointed to the CNN poll today. That shows him losing 8 points. And you know what? They haven't touched him. But there's so much negative on him that the media is treating him with kid gloves.
Let's get into this because this is what the voters want to hear. Yeah. They want to know, look, whoever they nominate has got to beat Hillary Clinton because Republicans obviously don't like Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
How would Hillary Clinton, with all of the scandal surrounding her, all right, whether it's fair or not?
I think Donald may be the only person on earth that Hillary Clinton could beat in a general election. It's why so many Republicans are horrified.
Why couldn't Trump convince all these people to go with him and not her?
Because 60% of the American people have a negative view of Donald right now.
Couldn't he get that down?
Well, you have to do it on some issue of substance. And part of the problem is Donald has agreed with Hillary Clinton on issue after issue
after issue.
Couldn't he
change?
Well, he does change.
Yeah.
But what people don't like about Hillary is that she changes and she's not telling the truth. We give that advantage away if we nominate someone who does the exact same thing. One of the stunning moments of this debate that no one commented on? When Donald Trump turned to Marco Rubio and said, Marco's exactly right that you got to negotiate and cut deals, and I agree with what he did on the Gang of Eight, negotiating and cutting deals with the Democrats on the Gang of Eight amnesty bill. I mean, that was a striking moment that no one commented.
Because it went over what most people said. I got to ask you one more question. Do you think Donald Trump's an honest man? I mean, you guys are portraying him as a con man, as a grifter. Is he honest or not?
Listen, I think he believes what he's saying.
Do you think Trump is honest?
I think he believes what he's saying, but I think he can say two opposite things in the course of a minute and believe both of them. If you put a lie detector test, he would say it's hot and cold in the same minute, pass the lie detector test both ways. And the reason what Trump has tapped into is the frustration, volcanic frustration with politicians who don't tell us the truth and don't do what they say. And Donald embodies that. And he's telling us he's not going to do what he says. He said, after I'm elected, he said he'd be a totally different person. He could be the most politically correct person.
He's going to be more gentle. I don't think he's going to change his policies.
But he does it over and over
again. I just want to be clear. So you do not think he is dishonest?
I think he is using rhetoric that he doesn't believe, and it's inconsistent with his record.
So he's a phony.
He is saying he's fighting for the working men and women of this country. He's never done it.
But you don't think he's dishonest?
Look, I'm not going to speak to his heart. His heart is between him and God. I can tell you his rhetoric doesn't match up with his record. And the easiest proof of this is the New York Times tape. The New York Times has a tape. And if he told them he wasn't telling the truth.
I don't know anything about that. I've known him for about 30 years. I think he's an honest man, but I think like most politicians, and that's what he is, he wants to get elected.
Well, I will mention the difference with me. I'm the same when I'm running for office and when I'm in office, the reason why we have so much support is that I do what I say. You know exactly what you're getting with me.
All right.
It's a no-spin campaign, to put it in your terms.
Okay. We'll see you down the road.
Excellent.
And we appreciate you coming in. And we'll have John Kasich up next as The Factor continues live from Detroit, the Motor City.
Now, listen, this has been going on for a long time here, and I appreciate the discussion back and forth. But there are a lot of people out there yearning for somebody who's going to bring America back, both at the leadership level and in the neighborhood, where we can begin to reignite the spirit of the United States of America. And let's stop fighting.
All right, we're continuing now from Detroit after the great debate, the 11th Republican debate. And here we have Governor John Kasich. He used to sub for me on The Factor.
That's where I got all my strength.
Now, you know, I'm going to say this right out loud. I hope I don't embarrass you. You're far and away the best on policy of the field. You are. You're the best on policy. You have the most experience. But you're not feeling the burn. And you're not feeling the anger, and that's what has held you back, in my opinion. Am I wrong?
Well, no, I do feel it, Bill, because I grew up in it.
But you're not getting it to the folks.
Well, you have to come to a town hall and see. You know, this debate format is always something I've struggled with, because people can't see me. You're limited. It's like, you know, they put you in a straitjacket. Now I'm getting a little better at it, and I'm.
But you still
starting to
come
enjoy
across
it.
as a cerebral guy.
Well,
not
look,
the mix-it-up guy.
Look, my town halls, boy, they're the most emotional things going.
Yeah.
You know, in the campaign.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Well, but I'm not going to come out here and scream and yell, Bill. It's not what's lifting me. I mean, the people say you're the adult in the room, and I think it'll pay off. Look, I got no coverage. From the time I announced in New Hampshire, I got no coverage.
You got no coverage tonight. In the first half an hour of this debate, we saw you twice. The first half hour. All right? But the reason you don't get any coverage is because you're not exciting out there. When you have Rubio and Trump calling each other names, all right, referring to various body parts, and you have Cruz basically calling a guy a gangster, Trump, and then you are saying, you know, I worked with President Reagan and we balanced the budget. Who are they going to put on TV?
But Bill, you know, what one of the executives in broadcasting said. You know, we used to believe in freedom of the press. Now we believe in freedom of the purse. And you know what? I'm just not going to take that. I did your show, okay, for almost 10 years. I would substitute. I got pretty good numbers, not numbers like you got.
Right.
But I didn't do it by yelling and screaming. And I really believe at the end, when we pick a president, things will change. And let me tell you, I think we'll get more focus. And when I win Ohio, which I will do, then it's a whole new ballgame.
So you win Ohio and you get all the delegates, right? Winner take all.
Right.
Okay. And Rubio says he's going to win Florida. Okay. All right. He's going to get the delegates.
We'll see if he
down.
does.
All right. Do you think he will?
I don't know. I mean, he's.
So you take from Rubio. You know that, right?
No. Let me
well, if you
tell
weren't in Virginia, he would have won.
Well, let me tell you this. If he hadn't been in, I'd have won Vermont. Now, let me just also tell you.
Yeah, you take from each other.
But you know, a lot of the people, if you go and you really go down and find out where these voters are, I get a lot of the people that think it's between me and Trump. You know why, Bill? Because people do have a sense that I get them. People do have a sense.
Got to win here, though. You'd have to win.
No,
Michigan.
I don't have to win in Michigan. No, I do. I have to be. You know, I have to have a decent showing here, and then we're going to Ohio, and I'm going to win Ohio, and then I'm going to go to Pennsylvania, Illinois, talk to the people that look. You guys have counted me out from day one. He wouldn't get in the race. He wouldn't get the New Hampshire.
I didn't say you wouldn't get in.
Well, but I wouldn't get to New Hampshire. I'd run out of money.
I didn't say that.
I wouldn't do well in New Hampshire.
I said it might not be your time in history. That's what I said, because of the anger of the voter. See, Trump's 35 to 40 isn't going to diminish.
Okay, let me tell you this. You don't beat Trump by getting into an insult war with him.
You don't think so?
No. I think the only way you beat Donald Trump is to have a vision bigger than his and be able to show that your experience and accomplishments will pull people out of this ditch.
It hasn't happened for you thus far.
Well, no, but it's a long way to go. We're not done yet. You know, we got a long way to go. And I win Ohio. Be able to move along. We're probably going to end up at a convention, Bill. And then you know what? They're going to pick an adult. They're not going to pick a yeller or a screamer.
That's what it looks like now. That's what Romney did today. Would you take VP?
No, absolutely not.
No way.
No, I'm not
Kidding me?
interested. I'm
No?
not. I got the second best job in the country. I'm governor of Ohio, and I once had the third best job, substitute host of The Factor.
All right, Governor, look, as I said, you did a magnificent job, or you are doing a magnificent job in your home state of Ohio. There's no doubt about it. You know your policy. I don't know if it's your time in history, but I'm glad you're running, and I appreciate you.
Well, the people that are watching The Factor, if you like John Kasich, make it known. And then also tell O'Reilly, put me on more, but don't pick on me when I come on. Okay?
All right. Good to see you, Governor.
All right, sir.
All right, Goldberg and Perino are warming up in the bullpen, and we're happy you're watching this live edition of The Factor from Detroit. We'll be right back.
I also happen to call him a lightweight, okay, and I have said that, so I would like to take that back. He's really not that much of a lightweight. And as far as, and I have to say this, he hit my hands. Nobody has ever hit my hands. I've never heard of this one. Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it.
All right, we continue now with post-debate analysis. And joining us again from Miami, Bernard Goldberg. Okay, look, I don't really have any questions for you. You heard the debate. You heard me with all the candidates, so let it fly.
I'd like to talk about the soundbite you just played leading into this segment. Donald Trump said something that I can't say on this channel what he really meant when he talked about the size of a particular body part, because that would be vulgar. But Donald Trump said it. I can't say it, but Donald Trump said it, and he's running for president of the United States. And he didn't only say it on national television, he said it during a presidential debate. Now, Bill, I know you care about kids. You've talked about that a lot. Imagine if a family is watching this debate with their 12-year-old daughter, and she said, what did he mean by that about size? And there's no, is there anything that would embarrass his supporters, mainly his supporters on conservative television and radio, who have fallen madly in love with Donald Trump and who slobber over him in just the same way as liberals in the media slobbered over Barack Obama?
All right. I see it differently. I didn't take offense by it. I think Trump is doing what he always does, appealing to regular people, playing off the Rubio thing. So if you're going to criticize Trump, you got to criticize Rubio. He did it first.
Do you realize what he said? Do you realize what he said?
Of course I realize what he said,
right,
but it was done in a jocular way.
Yeah, well,
I wouldn't say what he said. I mean, it's not my style.
No,
but I know what he's doing, and all of the guys and gals who support him chortled. Word of the day, they chortled when he said it. And I wasn't particularly offended by that, but that's okay.
He's running for president. He's running for president.
Look, I know what it, but it's a different era. It's a different time. He's running for president as a populist, not a Republican or a Democrat.
How come you're so concerned, as you rightly should be, about the coarsening of the culture? You always talk about that and how crude and vulgar we're getting.
Look, you saw what Trump said to me. You saw what Trump said to me at the top of the program. I'm a negative guy now in his mind. All right. I probably won't even get him to come in anymore because I have challenged him on his demeanor. All right. I have. But I'm fair. And I didn't think that was that big a deal. Now, let's go on. And right. And I love that. That's why I got you on a program. We want disagreement. Who do you think won the debate?
Well, I think at least three of the candidates, at their worst, were better than Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is at her best. You know, I thought Rubio was very good. I think you're right in what you said to Governor Kasich just a few minutes ago, that he's not feeling the burn and he's too cerebral. But that's interesting because William F. Buckley couldn't win the nomination this time around because he's also too cerebral. And this is the year for Barnum and Bailey and not cerebral. But I think Kasich did very well, but I don't think it'll help him. I think Rubio did very well, and I think Cruz sounded very smart.
Okay, you live in Florida.
Who did I leave out?
You left out Trump because you don't like Trump. I mean, I know that. We all know that, and that's your opinion. But let's get to Florida.
But let me say this. Let me say this very briefly. I spent time with Donald Trump in Scotland. He was as gracious as can be, and half the story I did was negative, and he was still gracious. I met two of Donald Trump's grown-up children, the nicest kids you'll ever meet. So when you said yesterday that he's a different person when he's not campaigning, I believe you because I've seen that other person. If he acted that way,
he's under siege, right? He's under siege, and I understand why he feels everybody's negative toward him. But I got to do my job. But I want to get this because I only got 30 seconds. You live in Florida. You know the state as well as any human being in this country. Rubio says he's going to win. Rubio has to win. Will Rubio win?
As of today, I don't think so. This Trump is a train that's going down the tracks at 1,000 miles an hour, and things can change. Things can change in politics. You know, a day is a week, and a week is a lifetime. And Rubio might win, but if he doesn't, I'll repeat what a million other pundits have said before me. It's probably over for him. But as of today, I'd say Trump is going to win.
All right, Bernie Goldberg, everybody, we appreciate it. You know, I really appreciate you staying up late, Bernie, because, you know, I know you're usually in bed by about 9. And, you know, it's very nice of you to do that. Dana Perino, who's up like 1, 2 in the morning, is on deck. And we'll be right back from Detroit, Michigan.
I have a policy question for you, sir.
Let's see if he answers it.
I will. Don't worry about it, Marco. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, little Marco. I will.
All right, well, let's hear Big Don.
Donald. Don't worry about it, don't worry about it, little Marco.
Gentlemen, gentlemen.
You ought to show up.
Gentlemen, you got to do better than this.
This guy has the number one.
Mr. Trump, may I ask you, Mr. Trump, I'd like to ask you a policy question. Your proposed tax cut.
That's why the people in Florida do not like him.
All right, we continue now with the post-debate analysis from Detroit. I got to say, I really have to say, I've been doing this a long time, all right? I've been in journalism a long time. I've never, ever seen anything like this. Very hard to cover this race in a way that's fair and gives you the right perspective, all right, from where I sit. Because I understand why these guys are doing what they're doing. I understand it. Let's bring in Dana Perino, I believe understands it as well, to wrap things up for us. Now, look, the tell for me tonight was John Kasich, who is by far and away the best policy person, not only in the Republican sweepstakes, but in the country right now. Right? You know, he is. If you look at his record in Ohio, if you look at his experience level in Congress and what he's done, okay, there's nobody who can touch him. But he's just not tapping in to what the voters want. And they don't care, as I told Bernie Goldberg, if you make a crude comment or if you call someone names. They want an avenger in there. And I don't think that's going to change. Do you?
Well, I don't think that's true across the board. I think that there are a lot of people who care about the crude comments, and we don't have to get into that because you already did that with Bernie Goldberg. I do think there's a way to cover all of this fairly. I actually love the debate. I've loved this. I love being an observer, and I'm reminded of how much easier it is to be an observer than it is to be a participant. I think we should say good things about the moderators tonight and the way that Fox conducted this debate. You know, Bill, you might not have seen it, but even people like Nicholas Kristof, columnist of the New York Times, a liberal guy, said this was a tough debate. It was tougher than anything that the Democrats have had to face, and it was very fair. So the moderators, I think, should get some credit for that. I do think that it was more substantive, and John Kasich actually had a chance to shine for the first time in one of these debates because you only had 4 people.
Okay, but let me ask you something. Number one, we expect Wallace, Kelly, and Baer because they're always good. I've never seen them when they weren't good, right?
True,
I'm not
and
saying
I would say Megyn Kelly diffused that tension.
I don't need brownie points from anybody at this stage in my career, all right? I've never seen them when they weren't good. So, I mean, I just take that for granted. But you're right. They were good. And Kasich made his points. He's a little repetitive and he's a little cliche-ridden at the end of the day and all that stuff. But I'll tell you, Dana, I don't think you're going to see in the polls any rocket thing for, and even though about 15 million people probably watched the debate tonight, you're not going to see it. Yes, I think he will win his state of Ohio, and he'll hurt Trump in that
That's something, because
regard.
I don't think people were saying that last week. And that would be
maybe not.
movement.
But the point I'm trying to get across to not only you, but to everybody, is that this year is different than any other year in our republic. All right?
No doubt.
It's different. There is an uprising in this country. Now, the point of the matter is, how big is the uprising? Trump needs, as I told him, 25 million to convince that he doesn't have yet. He's got to, get about 60 million to win. He's probably got 15 to 20 now, maybe 30 he's got on his team. But, you got a flawed candidate up against him, whether it's not going to be Sanders. It's Hillary, who's very whip smart, by the way, very whip smart. And the Republican establishment, as we saw today with Mitt Romney, thinks that Hillary's going to kick Trump's butt.
Well, she's also going to have the Democrats consolidate behind her when they have a nominee.
Much easier than the Republicans, by the way.
Absolutely. And
much easier.
And you mentioned something to Bernie Goldberg, that Trump is not running as a Republican. He's running as a populist.
Populist, right.
Okay, so earlier today, when Mitt Romney gave the speech and he's appealing to Republicans and Republican sensibility, I think people have to understand, Bill, that is one of the things that Trump is going to have a hard time doing. He has to, of course, he might be able to get the popular vote. He might be able to actually get the nomination. Can he get those people to consolidate behind him? Because he's going to have to get the Republicans to overperform their numbers from 2012, and he's going to have to hope that the Democrats
but understand this. Here's a guy who came in at 3%, and he's now up to 35%. So this guy has an unlimited ceiling, and he is going to scorched earth Hillary Clinton. I mean, he's going to go down in flames if he loses. It's going to be bloody, and it's going to be a spectacle that we have never seen in our lifetime. So I think all of those projections are probably premature.
And vice versa. Because I think that the attacks from the Democrats against Donald Trump, if he becomes the nominee, are going to be unlike anything you've ever seen either.
I agree. All right, Dana, thanks for staying up late. Unlike Goldberg, Dana does stay up late, and we appreciate it.
But just for you.
I'm glad we had this opportunity to talk to all the candidates tonight. I hope you enjoyed our analysis. And once again, I want to tell you that my job here is to be fair, to all of the candidates, not to root for anyone. There's too much rooting, particularly on cable news. All right, there's a lot of deals made. Come on my show, I'll do this. You say that, I'll say this. We never do that, ever do that. All right, some guys are mad at me tonight. They'll be mad at me next week. I can't help it. What I have to do to you is to show you who the candidates are. All right, here's how I do that. I ask them personal questions, direct, to Ted Cruz. Do you believe Donald Trump is a dishonest person? You heard his answer, okay? And I pressed him on it. I want to get on the record what these people really believe behind the rehearsed thing. And the second is, even if somebody does something that offends me personally, all right, if I don't think it's being done in a malicious way or a way that is designed to offend, and I didn't think Mr. Trump's remark about the hands was that. I think he just thought it was witty, and somebody told him this might be a good thing to do, and he did it. So I didn't take offense. But anyway, we appreciate our ratings are through the roof. We appreciate you guys watching us every night. We hope you got something out of the debate. It was done very well by Fox News, and we really appreciate you watching The Factor live from Detroit, Michigan tonight. Have a good evening. We'll see you soon.